Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
It is an honor to be here representing Northwestern University, our football program, and most importantly, our players back in Evanston preparing to have a successful season this fall. I never could have imagined, nor did I desire, to become a head coach under these types of circumstances. That said, I'm honored to lead this group moving forward.
Here's a drive. That's hit to left field for Kisner. Back to the wall, and it's a goner. Andrew Kisner hits his 6th home run of the year. The Cardinals have a 10-4 lead.
Pitch is swung in high to right center field and deep. Back by the bullpen. It goes, and it is gone into the Red Sox pen, a home run. Duvall greets Kirby Yates with a first pitch home run. And the Red Sox get a big insurance tally, his 8th home run of the year. They now lead it 5-3.
And swinging ball, headed down, tied at 1. She did it, hooray!
I'm really happy with the tie. Obviously, we would love to have 3 points, but getting that goal and the emotions that go with it was a proud moment.
No idea that one.
Welcome in to Coffee and Cream on a Thursday morning on Hail Varsity Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. This is Michael Severe.
Are we going to change the name of the show based off of
just coffee and
shade
coffee?
Of coffee? Well, it could be like it could be latte or mocha, cappuccino and mocha.
Yeah,
you know, Americano.
Which one am I?
If I was going to go on a shade, I probably would say Carmelicious.
I think caramel's a good. What about you? What are you?
I think I'm kind of a latte with a latte.
Maybe a little bit of milk in there, a little bit of cream.
I was going to say a little bit more of the creamer, whatever you're using.
Yeah.
Don't use hazelnut. Don't like hazelnut.
No.
But any of the other ones.
I got almond milk in my coffee this
solid.
morning,
I like French vanilla.
Ooh, French vanilla is really good.
It's very solid. And which one is that? That's okay.
So this is a blonde latte, so it starts lighter.
Okay.
And then I get some almond milk in there.
Put in there.
Yeah.
And then it's even lighter.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. That's more of a beige. Brownish beige.
It is.
Yeah. Well, we definitely
it's lighter.
There's no cream. I know there's no cream right now.
No,
currently.
there's
and there's really no coffee if you're going by like I like it black. It's not. You're getting that. You're not getting that coffee. Not this morning, baby. That's not what you're getting.
No, sir, you are not.
But it's not about the name of the show is not about color, right? It's actually about like their takes.
Yeah.
Damon's very bold.
Well, so
and colorful.
What they told me was that Andrew's actually coffee because he's the energetic one in the morning.
Oh,
and then Damon kind of like mellows him out a little bit
with the cream. Okay,
which kind of makes sense.
Sure, sounds believable.
So that's what I was told. I was told that Andrew was coffee because
not what I thought at all
because of the energy.
Yeah, well, that's understandable, I guess. He does have energy, and Damon will come in occasionally and force you to have some energy. He will force you to have energy sometimes. Yes.
No, we are here live from the H&H Chevrolet studio at the Hail Varsity Club. Really good show for you here today. I'm excited to be here with Michael.
That's a heck of a promise you're making.
It's exciting.
What? That I'm excited.
That's a really, really great show.
We have a great show planned.
Okay.
We have a great show planned.
Yes. It's like Oppenheimer. They had a good plan. At the end, not so great.
Did you not like the movie?
No, I'm not.
You're talking about actual Oppenheimer.
I'm talking about the real life
Manhattan Project.
What did it? I've not seen the movie.
Okay,
but as a guy who lived in Albuquerque.
Oh, sure, yeah, pretty close to
Los Alamos a lot of times, and I go to Alamogordo for the base, and so I went there a lot, and I learned a lot of history about the area. It's a little hard for me to watch the movie knowing the history. It's really difficult because I'm guessing they don't get into the history of how horrible the situation was. Because
in terms of the conditions of
they went into a place that had people of color and
it was
either pushed them out,
like indigenous
drove them
people,
out.
Right.
Yes. I mean, we're talking about this is the 40s.
Yeah.
So you had people who were established communities.
Yeah.
Mainly northern New Mexicans and most Latinos. And they ran them out. They killed their livestock. They damaged their land. They mistreated those people pretty poorly.
Okay.
Then they hired them at the labs and put them in situations that gave them cancer because
Like
they didn't give them
dangerous
protection.
situation,
Yeah. So it's knowing all that history of living up there. It's a little bit difficult, although I do love the story of splitting the atom. And
it's a fascinating like
story
from a scientific standpoint.
Exactly. But it's mixed for me. It's really hard. And then and what they did to him after, like learning that
so
stuff.
that's a lot about what the movie's about.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's about like they're really into, because it's a long movie. It's about 3 hours.
Everything's 3 hours.
So about half of it is actually making the bomb.
Okay.
And then the other half is sort of his life afterward and trying to like blackball him and
he was
paint him as a communist and stuff like
did.
that.
Yep, they did. They took all of his
security clearances and stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of the movie is about that,
okay.
which is really interesting. They do gloss over the people part. Of
they don't
Los
talk about
Alamos.
the people that were there.
So they kind of briefly mentioned that there were like Native Americans there, and that's about it.
Yeah, there were some Native Americans there, but the majority of people there
like
were Mexicans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they don't mention that at all.
Oh wow. Okay. I'm not surprised. I mean, it's
right.
I'm assuming they don't spend a lot of time talking about the Japanese who blew up either.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
do they talk about how bad it was afterwards? All the people
not a ton.
Oh, okay.
There's a little bit.
Not saying we shouldn't have done it because we needed to end that war, but
it
was pretty bad afterwards.
Oh, sure, yeah. And there was
generations.
They talk about kind of the deliberating whether to use it or not. That's where they talk about the Japanese a lot and kind of the human cost and that type of thing.
That was a tough. I mean, imagine being Truman.
Right.
Imagine being in that situation.
Yeah. I thought it was really good. I liked the movie a lot, but I have a fascination. I've had a fascination with the Manhattan Project and Oppenheimer since I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's like when the Chernobyl miniseries came out. That was so good.
Like I watched the miniseries and I went back and watched the documentary.
Yeah. I've watched a couple documentaries since then. I've rewatched the miniseries.
It's good.
I've always had this weird fascination with Chernobyl too.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things, I have them in sports too. Like I've been fascinated with the SMU death penalty my entire life.
Yeah.
Just the whole
It's one of the best 30 for 30s too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Pony Excess one was so good.
Yeah. And you recognize we know people who are there.
Yeah.
In some of the videos because there's some Nebraska-based people.
Well, right. And then there's a lot of the sports writers at the time are like national
Dallas Morning News guys.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They're national personalities now. So there's these like random things, whether it's Oppenheimer, whether it's Chernobyl, whether it's SMU, that I just have this like fascination with, like almost a fixation on.
Oh wow.
So I was super excited to see Oppenheimer, and I really enjoyed
I have a problem, and I know people love him, but the director of the movie has an issue in his second act, in my opinion, in the majority of his movies, like they're boring. So he could cut the middle of the movies out. He doesn't. And so I'm always worried when I go see one of his movies, what part of that's going to be where I'm going to want to fall asleep.
Well, yeah.
He had it in, what was the last one he did with the plane and the ship and the boat?
Dunkirk.
There's so many parts of that movie where I'm like, you could have shortened this.
Dunkirk.
Could you shorten this,
was
please?
Not my favorite.
It's just slow.
I really
For a war movie,
yes,
it was kind of boring.
I really loved Interstellar.
See, that movie I hate.
Really?
I just rewatched it.
Yeah.
We were in Colorado Springs with a bunch of people, and the kids wanted to watch it that we were sitting with, and we watched it over again. And I'm still sitting there. There's a point where they're on the ship, and they're complaining back and forth before Matt Damon goes crazy. And I'm like, this is some of the worst acting. Like, it's bad. That's as bad as McConaughey, I think, has ever been.
See,
he is so bad in those scenes.
But I really, again, one of my fascinations is like black holes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like it's really in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And so like I didn't even notice. Like I'd have to go watch again specifically looking for bad acting to even notice, because so much of the content is like right in my sweet spot that I don't even care.
Yeah, that's one I didn't like at all. My favorite obviously is his first one. I like a little bit of Inception, but the middle of Inception I think is too long. There's when they have to go through all 5 levels coming back. I'm like, come on. Skip through a couple of the levels coming back.
Yeah, just kind of like we get it.
Yeah. And Memento's my favorite. That's the one that I say is a perfect movie. I love Memento.
Memento's iconic. Insomnia.
I've seen it. I don't think I even knew that was one of his movies.
Yeah, that's the one people forget about. It's
I've seen
after Memento.
Because they made Insomnia, and there was another movie similar to it at the same time.
Yeah, and I don't remember
the one where they're in Alaska.
Yeah,
that movie. And so I think of those being the same. The one that I like, but I don't like the middle of it, is the one with the magicians.
The Prestige.
The Prestige.
That one's really good.
It's really good.
Really
but
good.
again, it's got a whole
kind of drags in
30 minutes where I'm like, that's the whole going to visit him and like cut all that out. Let's go. Let's get going. Let's get going to the dramatic ending. Give me a surprise ending. Come on.
Right there. And I don't mind the slow play as much as you.
And normally I do like the idea of telling a story. Yeah. I do. I for most stuff I like the telling a story, but it's not the telling of the story part where he gets boring. In my opinion, it's the second act.
Yeah,
I dig his first acts. I think his third acts are great for the most part.
I think he mostly is just building tension,
except for the person in the damn bookcase. I still hate that. I just can't stand that. I remember looking at my wife in the movie there, going, "Are we leaving now? Or are we waiting to the end of this?"
What do they call the second act? The turn.
Yeah, the turn.
Yeah.
The third is the Prestige.
Yeah, the Prestige. That's and maybe it's just the other two acts are so good that I don't care or notice. And then obviously he did the Batman movies.
Yeah, so I like the first Batman movie. I think
Batman Begins
is a really good storytelling. One of the best examples ever made, and I'm a comic book guy, ever made of telling his story.
Yeah,
it's not typical. It's a different take on it. It's one of the original Dark Knight takes. It's a Frank Miller take on it. I think it's great.
Whoa!
And then I thought most of the second one I like. Until the last 30 minutes, where his voice is so grating.
Yeah,
the last 30 minutes of the movie.
It gets worse through the three movies. Like in Batman Begins, and I don't know if he did it on purpose, to like see him like devolving further into Batman being his main kind of identity, and Bruce Wayne is the alternate identity. That's kind of what I think. But you're right. The sound of it gets so rough, especially. I mean, in Dark Knight Rises, it's basically the whole movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And Bane steals that movie.
Yeah, I love Tom Hardy.
Bane, he's an incredible actor.
Incredible actor.
Did you ever see The Drop?
No.
Oh my God. Talking about a movie that is exposition almost the whole way.
Yeah.
And the last 15 minutes, you're like, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you making that movie.
Did you?
You should watch The Drop.
I'll say I'll have
to. And call me right after the end.
Yeah.
And be like, oh,
really?
Yeah.
Have you seen him? Did you see Warrior, the MMA movie?
I have not seen Warrior.
That movie's phenomenal.
But I've seen Bronson.
Bronson's good. Warrior's phenomenal.
Is it really? Like, I've heard good things about it.
Good movie.
I don't know why I haven't watched it.
It's
kind of like up in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, it seems like something that
because I like him and I like MMA, and so
it's so good.
And I always like the dichotomy of either brothers or really close friends.
So Joel Edgerton is his brother in that one. He's really good, and then Nick Nolte is really good.
I just rewatched because the kids we're in Colorado Springs. The Hulk. Remember the original Hulk? Nick Nolte's in that.
Which is that the
Bana?
Eric Bana?
Oh my God, that movie is so bad. I forgot how bad it was.
It's really bad.
I forgot how bad it was. The first 15 minutes of the movie is horrible.
Both those are bad though.
Well, I don't feel that way. I don't think the Incredible Hulk was horrible. Was that bad?
As bad as
it's much better.
The Hulk.
The reason why the Incredible Hulk is better is because the villain, the guy who becomes the Abomination, that dude's such a great actor.
Yes,
and he's really good in it.
He's
I liked him in it, but we watched the opening. The first 15 minutes is the frogs exploding.
Yes,
the whole chemistry experiment of trying to make it, and you're like, this is really bad.
Yeah, it's Nick Nolte plays their dad in Warrior.
Okay,
and he's like this alcoholic, and
that's what he plays in every movie,
right? But he crushes it. I think he got nominated.
Oh, like a best
supporting actor for it.
Okay,
You should watch Warrior.
That's weird because I normally watch all movies that have nominations. I go back and watch them.
I'm almost positive he has.
I'll watch some really bad movies
because they got a nomination.
Because somebody got a supporting actor nomination.
Yeah. Well, this is a really good movie.
Okay, well, I'll watch it.
I would
you watch The Drop. I'll watch Warrior.
I will remember.
Two very different movies.
Yeah.
Two very different movies.
Well, right now we're going to drop the lineup.
All right.
Day. You see what I did there?
Yeah. Is it sponsored?
We've got Damon Benning.
Who's that?
He's a guy that I think had a show with at one point.
Is he a former Husker?
He is a former
Damon
Husker.
Benning is the tailback.
Championships?
2, I believe.
Nice. They ever run for 200 yards in a game?
Orange Bowl?
No.
What was he at in the Orange Bowl?
His best game was Pacific.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know how much. I think it was 173. I'm just throwing that out there
because he went off in the Orange Bowl, because he
won the MVP. But actually, that was one where Frost also had a very good game.
Yeah,
they both had good games.
Yeah, he'll join us. He's in Indianapolis for media days, so he will call in. We're supposed to talk to him 8:00, so we'll plan on that. We'll get to the Zipline 6-pack. That's where I ask random questions of Michael's. Well,
I love zip lines, by the way.
Excuse me. Shane will ask random questions of Michael and myself.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Coming up at 8:43, we will talk to Brian Edwards. He will give us some. I want to talk to him about the Spence Crawford fight.
Oh yeah, very excited about that
fight.
Very excited.
We'll get to that as well. We've got Michael Bruntz coming by at 9.
Bruntz.
Maybe the thing I'm most excited about today is Omaha Whiskey's coming by.
Yeah, I'm not excited about that though. But you
I'm going to taste.
You
do
do yours.
You're going to talk while I taste.
10 carries, 173 yards. Who doesn't know Damon Benning? 173
against Pacific.
Yep.
There we go. Can you look up what he had in the Orange Bowl? It's bothering me now.
Yeah, I can do it. Sure.
Because he went off.
He did. He won the MVP.
We've got Omaha Whiskey coming by. They're going to do a little taste test for me. Michael's going to run the show while I do that. And then Shane, how do you pronounce Kevin's last name for me?
Iole.
Iole. Okay.
Iole. He's one of the best boxing writers I've ever been around.
Well, that's
he loves it.
A fantastic tease because we're going to talk to him at 9:43 to preview Crawford and Spence on
I can't wait.
Saturday
night.
I've been waiting. We've literally for years.
Yeah, literally 5 years. Yeah.
I mean, for this to actually happen, and we can get into it a little bit now. I'm so excited because they're both still pretty much in their primes.
Yeah, no doubt.
Bud's probably on the later half of his prime.
Yeah, you're talking about a guy who's got with everything like 90 fights when you count his amateur fights.
And you're looking, I mean, he's what,
31, right?
Bud, I thought he was a little older.
Is he older than that?
I thought he was
33.
I thought he was closer to my age.
Oh,
but
how old are you?
35.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's 35.
35. Okay.
So, but
and Spence is only like 29.
I think so. Spence is younger for sure.
Yeah.
But
and doesn't have as many fights.
Obviously. Oh, he's 33. Spence's.
Oh, so they're
right in the same range there.
And that's kind of a wheelhouse for boxing now because it takes forever to get big fights made.
It takes forever to get big fights made. Because of where boxing is and kind of our sports consciousness, it takes that long for guys to build up a name that we care that much about.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. Unless they're spectacular, like that Tank guy. Unless they're spectacular, have a great nickname.
And it just takes, or they've got these spectacular knockouts, right? Where it just captures your attention the way, I mean, I know it's been 35 years now, but the way Tyson did, right?
Yeah.
Because of just the way it was happening. And Tyson's fascinating just because they managed his career so strangely at the beginning. He fought all the time.
And he fought on ESPN.
Yes.
Like once a month, it felt like.
It literally was once a month.
I remember the streak of knockouts, and they were like, that's now 9 in a row. That's now 11 in a row. That's like.
But his fights were so short that he could fight more often than everybody else because he didn't have to recover.
Damon had 95 yards in the Orange Bowl.
Okay.
15 carries for 95 yards. Frost had 9 for 62 in that game. And I believe they both had 2 touchdowns.
There you go.
All
right. But yeah, so we'll talk Crawford, Spence kind of throughout the show, but definitely with Kevin Iole.
I talked to Red Spikes, one of his trainers, taped it a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
And they are extremely confident.
I mean,
extremely.
Bud usually is
more than normal.
Really,
I've been around Bud now for about a decade.
Yeah,
and
because he's a confident guy.
Really, since the Gamboa fight, seen a lot of him.
Yeah,
and that he's more confident, but his team is more confident now
than
I ever remember. And that's why the odds have done what they've done.
Yeah.
I mean, they opened up; they both were minus 112 at one point.
It was basically
very
a
even
coin flip. Yeah,
and it's completely flipped to where Bud's the big favorite.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's going to be interesting, and we can talk to Brian Edwards about that too.
Oh yeah,
about the gambling odds and everything there. But I can't describe to you how excited I am for this.
I can't wait. I'm hoping that I'll be able to do a live podcast right after it.
Oh yeah,
that's the hope that as soon as it's over, we go into podcast studio and Josh Jones and we just do a live.
So you're watching it at Let It Fly?
I'm watching it at Let It Fly. Yep,
yeah.
They have a $20 cover for people to go in.
Sure.
But I'm hoping to be able to sit in the podcast studio, just watch the fight, and as soon as it ends,
just go boom,
go live. That's what I'm hoping to do.
Yeah, that'd be terrific.
That's always fun. Well, it will be really fun if Bud wins.
Right. Yeah.
Then we're not going live if Bud wins.
Well, we don't even like to think about that possibility.
Yeah.
But no, we'll have plenty of Crawford and Spence coverage kind of throughout the day. But we've kind of buried the lead here. We got a few more minutes before we have
the lead?
Well, I mean, Big Ten Media Days.
It's going on.
Going on right now.
Yep.
There's kind of a weird amount going on in college football at the moment.
Yes.
Colorado makes it official.
Is Colorado the lead?
I don't know if it's it's a pretty big deal.
We're gonna. I know we're up. We're gonna eventually be up against it. I want to tell that story from 2010.
Yeah,
from the perspective of a person who was doing a daily radio show then, and Colorado's involved. It's fascinating. Those 3 or 4 months.
Yeah,
when we were going through that whole process of it getting ready to have, expansion and movement and all that. So
let's hold on to that. We'll do that in the next the next segment.
Yep.
The other big thing that dropped yesterday was Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, is it big?
It's a big deal.
It's not shocking, right?
It's not shocking, but it is a big deal.
It is a big deal,
right? Like those can be different things, right?
Do you believe that actually? Like, do you think there should be any punishment?
Well, see, I don't know.
Because the unequal treatment of student athletes is just the norm.
Sure,
right?
But
some guys get in trouble.
It depends.
Some guys don't.
It depends on to what extent. So the thing that he's going to get in trouble for, if anything, is covering up the drug tests.
Yeah, I wonder because I don't think Oregon got in trouble for that.
Okay,
so Oregon did it. They did it a lot.
Yeah. Like I said, if anything, it's going to be that. Because it doesn't sound like a bullying, hazing, harassment situation.
Exactly right.
Which is what really gets you in trouble.
Yep.
Obviously, in addition to actual crimes, but it is just a really bizarre. And again, if you know anything about PJ Fleck, not surprising that the guy runs a cult, basically.
And you almost have to be that way to win at Minnesota, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think you win at Minnesota
normally
in a normal way.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of those schools like that where you have to do something a little unusual to win at those places.
There were some players suspended for the marijuana thing at Oregon.
There were
some, yeah. The coaches weren't.
And
there was no coach punishment, but there were some players.
I think it also depends. So the thing that would get him in trouble is if they have proof of he was literally letting people exchange these Fleck bucks or whatever.
Yeah.
I just keep thinking of Shroot bucks.
What is that?
From The Office.
Oh, I never watched that.
Oh, well, so there's this episode where some guy's like taking over.
Is it like Dwayne Shute or something like that? Dwight. Okay.
Dwight.
I have heard the names.
So there's Dwight is this, kind of eccentric character, and he is taking over as like acting manager for a while. And so he's trying to get people to like kind of build like good habits and stuff by giving them Shroot bucks. And they're like you have to exchange like a crazy number, like 100,000 to get.
It's like a peso,
an extra like 15 minutes on your lunch break or something.
Yeah.
And so that's what it reminded me of.
Okay.
People who have seen The Office, it's a funny reference, but I'm with one of the 4 people in America who
I watched the first 4 episodes.
The first 4 episodes are the worst.
And then I watched 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And I believe 6 might have been the one about diversity.
Yep.
And I turned to my son who had already seen the whole series. And I go, sorry, I can't do this. I can't watch this show.
Yeah.
I think if I'd have watched it at the time when I was how I was then, I would have been okay with it. The way I am now, learning more about and respecting more about people, I can't watch it.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable to me.
So the first season is by far the most uncomfortable.
It was.
If you can get past the first 6 episodes, it's like a totally different show, honestly.
And then Michael Scott, literally, I want to fight him.
Yeah.
Like I would like to fight him in real life and fight him.
You're gonna beat up Steve Carell?
Sure. if he's acting like that dude, sure.
He's not.
I can't do that. I can't burn those kind of people.
I've heard Steve Carell is one of the
nice guys
people in the business.
Yeah. Kelly Clarkson. Sorry, that's your drop for you right there.
All right, coming up next, Michael Severe has some Colorado Buffalo stories. We'll get
Colorado, Missouri, Nebraska.
We'll get into that, and we've got way more coming up for you here on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
I'm excited to begin my first full academic year, 1,000 Big Ten student athletes across 28 sports. I cannot help but remember the last time I was at a Big Ten football media day. It was back when I was at ABC Sports. Keith Jackson came with us, and I can tell you there's nothing better than traveling with Keith Jackson around college football. He was remarkable. He hosted and introduced the coaches. As you might imagine, the introductions were memorable, and that experience inspired me to lead the coaches' introductions to the players.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
They announce our coaches.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I cannot help but remember the last time I was at a Big Ten football media day. It was back when I was at ABC Sports. Keith Jackson came with us, and I can tell you there's nothing better than traveling with Keith Jackson around college football. He was remarkable. He hosted and introduced the coaches. As you might imagine, his introductions were memorable, and that experience inspired me to lead the coaches' introductions to the pros. And so over the next 2 days, you will hear from our media partners as they announce our coaches.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio. We are also on AM 590 in Omaha. You can catch us on YouTube live. You can hop in those comment sections on YouTube. You can also hit us up at 888-638-4876 or hit us up on Twitter at RALulla or
I'm just Michael. Hello, Michael Severe. I don't hear myself.
I don't think he's on, Shane.
Shane.
We good?
It was on.
Yeah, I couldn't hear anything.
All right, we're good now.
It wasn't really on. It was muted.
It was
muted. The question is moot.
They're already
Michael Severe, M-I-K-E-L.
There, yeah, just Michael Severe,
M-I-K-E-L. Severe.
Not Michael Severe. It's
no.
Michael Severe.
Mike, sure, you can do it like that. Yeah. That works. That works fine. Yeah.
You can hit us up on Twitter. Get involved with the show. All right. So before the break, we were talking about kind of the Minnesota thing a little bit and the Colorado making the move back to the Big 12 official. And before we get into your story, because I think this will lead into it, it seemed this thing has gone a lot of different ways with like the Big 12 and Pac-12 because those have been the two. I guess you can throw the ACC in there a little bit, but their rights
taking in
their rights deal has kind of kept them intact more so than probably would have otherwise.
Outside of Maryland.
But the Big 12 and Pac-12 have kind of gone back and forth on which one feels like it's going to be dying at any given moment. Right? So when Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri leave back in 2010 into 11, right? It felt like, okay, the Big 12 is maybe in trouble. But then Texas, because there was rumors that Texas and Oklahoma might leave at the time.
It was announced that it was going to end.
And like, so it was like disintegrating before our very eyes, right?
Texas legislature
stopped it, right?
Stopped it,
so that was a huge kind of like seeming death knell to the Big 12. And then obviously Texas and Oklahoma end up staying. And then the Pac-12 in the recent few months, or I guess couple years, has, with how bad their TV deals have been, that was kind of the writing on the wall, it seemed like. And then finally the Big 10 strikes the blow with the Pac-12 last year with UCLA and USC departing for the Big 10. And then you've got the rumors of Oregon and Washington maybe on their radar as well.
The Four Corner schools.
I still think that the Big 10 likely takes a few more schools from the Pac-12 before this is all said and done.
Eventually.
I don't know when, but before it's all over. And then you started having rumors of the Big 12 starting to maybe grab some, there's rumors of Arizona and Arizona State. And then obviously now you've got Colorado moving back to the Big 12. I think they're talking about Utah maybe coming.
The four corner schools, something's going to happen with them. They may go together wherever they go.
Yeah, which it really wouldn't surprise me if Utah, Arizona State, and Colorado, which has already made the move, all end up in the Big 12.
Right.
Because those are the Pac-12 schools that the Big 10 probably has no interest in.
Definitely.
So
and you got to remember, they do consider academics.
Yes, that's why like in Arizona State,
they don't mess
Colorado,
around with some of those.
None of those schools are going to the Big 10. The schools that likely appear as candidates for the Big 10 are Stanford, Cal, Oregon, and Washington, I would guess.
Right. And eventually I think they'll try to, I know what the grant of rights is, but I think eventually they'll try to get one of those schools, or at least two of those schools from the ACC.
Yeah.
They love North Carolina.
The ACC makes sense too. A lot of those schools fit their profile. Virginia fits their profile. Duke, North Carolina fits their profile. If you get one of Duke or North Carolina, I assume you have to take the other one.
Right.
Even like a Wake Forest fits their profile in terms of academics and still having high major football and sports programs in general, right? So I think we're far from over on this thing.
Sure.
But I also think, as we saw in 2010, when it seemed like the whole world was shifting landscape at the time, it takes a lot longer than we realize.
Yeah.
So you were going back, you were doing a live radio show every day back in 2010 when this all started to shift for not the first time. I mean, you've had some movement, obviously the formation of the Big 12 and stuff like
Penn
that.
State in 94, 93, 94,
Florida State joining the
Which
ACC was a huge deal because they were fiercely independent for so long.
Or you go back to when Tulane left the SEC because they thought it was too corrupt in the 1940s.
I mean, they weren't wrong.
They were right.
They weren't wrong.
They were right. They made a mistake.
Didn't really work out for Tulane.
They made a mistake.
And that's kind of what it feels like Colorado's saying right now. It's like, we may be messed up.
You got to go back. Yeah.
So you were doing a show every day back in 2010, and we're kind of live watching this happen. What was that process like at the time?
And it was really unique because I was doing the show with Kevin Kugler, and Kevin had his sources. And
who's that?
Voice of a generation. And I had mine, and mine were more some national sources, places I'd worked before, people that were, and I knew people in Indianapolis. And so we both had information. But it was really cool the way it all worked out. So the initiator of all of this was a vote about doing individual school networks. And the two schools that voted against having a Big Ten type network for the Big 12 were Texas, everybody talks about. Nebraska was the other one because Nebraska wanted the Nebraska network. So we're talking 2009 at this point. They come together, all the rest of the schools, the other 10 schools are like, nope, we don't think this is the way you should do it. You shouldn't have individuals. We're not. So you end up not getting a Big Ten type network. Big 12 would have been first. They would have had their own network. So then the next thing that happens is Nebraska starts thinking to themselves, maybe we need to make a move. But before all of that, Missouri goes to the Big Ten, and they're like, we want to come to the Big Ten. And the Big Ten actually, think about it this way. You're at a bar, there's a girl on the other side of the bar, or you're a girl and there's a boy on the other side of the bar, and you flirt all night, but that person has no intention of going home with you. They're actually going home with somebody who they haven't looked at on the other side of the bar. And that was the Nebraska-Missouri thing. Missouri, all along thought they were going to the Big Ten. Their fans did, the university did, everybody did. And the whole time.
And they sort of make sense as a Big Ten team.
By the way, the academics compared to Nebraska, much better.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
and it's kind of closing the gap now, but at the time, it wasn't even close. And so the idea of Missouri going to the Big Ten, I was like, okay, what's going to happen in Nebraska? Well, the Big Ten comes to Nebraska, invites Nebraska to go. Missouri's stuck. Right then, Colorado says to themselves, we can't be left out. So they jump the line over both Missouri and Nebraska, and they make the announcement that instead of waiting to the following year, which they originally were going to do, to leave to go to the Pac-12, they're leaving a year early. So this is all happening over the course of about 2 weeks. Lee Barfnick had incredible reporting on it. There were a lot of people across the country. There was a guy down in A&M, had great reporting on it. Another guy at Texas Tech, great reporting. Guys I still follow on Twitter. Anyway, this is all happening. So we find out Missouri is looking for someplace. Maybe it'll be the SEC. We know Nebraska's leaving. We know Colorado's leaving. The next week, you find out that Texas and Oklahoma are both flirting with going to the Pac-12. It was going to be the Pac-16. You were going to take those two teams and two other ones. The problem with that is Texas Tech and Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, both tier 3 schools at the time academically. So they weren't going to be accepted by the Pac-12. So they weren't going to go along. You had Baylor, which had a whole lot of power in the Texas legislature, right?
So that's the thing people forget about Baylor. That's why Baylor's always included. That's why they got included in the Big 12 in the first place, is because they're a really good academic school, and a lot of the people with political power in the state of Texas have Baylor ties, whether they graduated.
Former governors, too.
So that's an important thing to remember about Baylor, because on most other athletic levels, they should not be included most of the time.
So the legislature comes out and they go, look, this is what's going to happen. There's something called lion's share of money. And the majority of the money that comes from the state to colleges goes to Texas. There's a big chunk that goes to A&M. They say to Texas, if you leave, at the time it was Pac-12, if you leave, we're going to cut your lion's share of state funding because you're leaving A&M. You're leaving
the rest of the state schools.
Right, exactly. So you're leaving us. So Texas is like, oh, my goodness. So the legislature comes out and says, listen, goes to the Big 12 and says to the Big 12, why don't you let them have their network? Let them have this Longhorn network, and then they'll stay.
That'll appease them.
Because at that point, you had, like I mentioned Texas and Oklahoma, but you also had those middle schools. You had Kansas, Kansas State, and Iowa State trying to figure out where they were going.
Yeah, because those are the schools that would most likely get left out.
And by the way, they were headed to the Mountain West or the Big East.
Yeah, I remember the Big East being a thing for Kansas.
Kansas was because the basketball part of it. So you had all that happening. And again, this is all happening over the course of 3 weeks where all this rumors. And then out of nowhere, the Big 12 survived. You got to give Dan Beebe some credit
for keeping that thing together.
He kept it together. It survived. And now, in the end, it might be certainly not Pac-12, but it'd be the third or the fourth best conference after everything gets put together.
So I want to keep on this in the next side because we still haven't talked about Texas A&M leaving yet.
Yes.
So let's get to that. We're talking about this because Colorado is coming back to the Big 12. We'll get more in the conference realignment coming up next on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
Secondly, I want to thank our players. In all my one-on-one meetings, time with our players during workouts,
Rogers and Benning will be back
it has been
in
absolutely
3 minutes.
inspiring. It is an honor to be here representing Northwestern University. Secondly, I want to thank our players, our staff, and all. Secondly, I want to thank our players. Want to thank our players.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream. Ravi, Lulla, and Michael Severe here with you this morning, and we're brought to you by Dingman's Collision Center. They've been in business for over 25 years in Omaha, family-owned and operated. They've got the latest technology for you. It allows them to work on all makes and models, everything from Fords to Teslas. 4 locations throughout the metro area, along with a standalone mechanical shop at 120th and Maple. Voted first place Best of Omaha for 18 years running. And for every car they repair, they have a give back program. You can learn more about that at dingmans.com/r-community. That is our friends over at Dingman's.
Shout out to Darcy. My microphone's still not on. Shout out to Darcy. Darcy Dingman.
Darcy
awesome. Darcy's
from
awesome.
Dingman's.
Yes.
So we love Dingman's. We appreciate them for being a part of what we do here. You can be a part of what we do here on the phone, 888-638-4876, or you can hop in those YouTube comments. Sometimes those comments are popping off. Travis is in the comments again this morning, and so is CFB Professor. Travis says, CU's ability to survive like a cockroach in the apocalypse is admirable.
It is. Congratulations to them.
They're a super strange school because they don't have a lot of money.
They are academically, they're strong.
Sure.
And they have one of the most beautiful campuses on the planet. That's about it.
But like athletically, they're kind of always less than what you would expect, or less than maybe they think of themselves, especially in football.
Yep.
The money is always kind of an issue, or has been recently for them. I mean, they had to like fundraise to figure out Deion's contract. Like it was a problem, right? And so they're a really interesting school. But I wanted to get back to kind of that initial leaving process. You mentioned Colorado, them kind of jumping everybody to the front of the line to get out of the Big 12, and Missouri kind of getting left at the altar with the Big Ten, and they find a landing place in the SEC. The part of this equation that we hadn't talked about yet was Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And I always, for some reason, kind of forget about them.
Yeah.
They're kind of a forgettable team sometimes. Again, a place that, I mean, no lack of resources there at Texas A&M, but a lot of times underwhelming what they actually put together, especially on the football field. So I wanted to, like, as you're kind of not reporting, but you're getting sources on this, and then you're doing a radio show at the same time. How did the Texas A&M piece of that come together after? Because it was a little bit after the other three, right?
Yeah. So we, it's funny. That was always there were three schools that I'd always bring up that had no excuses for not being great. And I used to always say it was Clemson, it was Missouri, and A&M. And Missouri was the one really because they had no in-state power. At least Clemson had South Carolina, and Texas A&M had Texas. So is the deal to keep Texas in the Big 12 was, yes, you can have the Longhorn Network. ESPN is going to pay you $100 million for this. You're going to be able to give money back to the university, all that stuff. And Texas is happy. Well, of course, A&M, which is one of the most incredible rivalries. Very few schools hate the other school so much,
genuine dislike,
that they dog them in their fight song.
Yes.
They're in each other's fight song. That's how much they hate each other, right? So the idea of Texas A&M leaving Texas was, none of us could really fathom it, but they were so upset about the fact that they were allowed to have that Texas was allowed to have the Longhorn Network that they started looking. And at the time they were looking, the SEC was about to hit a new contract cycle. And it was that first really big one.
Yes.
It was when you had the split from both ESPN and CBS, and you're like, oh, wow, we could double the amount of money we're getting a year. And by the way, you talk about A&M having money, and they do, but they don't have as much as you'd think. John Oakey, who is that's his alma mater, went to A&M, was in the cheer corps and all that stuff, would always talk about how much they were always asking for the alumni to donate. So they actually don't do like Texas does financially. They do well. They don't do as well as Texas does. And so they were really upset about Texas getting this extra money. They go to the SEC. It's right around time where contracts are changing. You're getting ready to sign a new one with TV. And A&M says, we want to go. And the SEC was very open. The interesting part that I did not know until much later was when all that conversation was happening about Texas and Oklahoma at a minimum going to the Pac-12 with two other schools, one of them was not A&M. A&M was always looking to the SEC.
Yes.
Even back then, and we all thought that they all were going to go to the Pac-12, but it wasn't true. A&M was always looking, was always willing to leave Texas, which was surprising to all of us. And now we know that Oklahoma as well was also looking at the SEC at the time. It was really only Texas that was trying to get everybody
on the
to get the four to go to Pac-12 to make it to Pac-12.
You know, it's kind of funny because I can almost understand the Texas A&M wanting to be separated from Texas. It's kind of the like Scottie Pippen syndrome, right? So late in his run with the Bulls, he, obviously he demands the trade in the last season. He ends up getting traded.
Yeah.
But his attachment to like Phil Jackson and Jordan wasn't the same that other guys was.
No.
Right? Like Rodman was like, I'm going to do whatever Mike tells me to do and whatever Phil tells me to do.
Right. Except when he went to Vegas and disappeared.
Well, yeah. I mean, but in terms of like his career.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Right.
Mike was not leaving Phil. That was full stop, right? Scotty kind of seemed okay with getting out of the shadow. Like, obviously, he wanted to get paid. That was the big driving force.
Yeah.
But he kind of seemed okay with maybe wanting to do it on his own. And I think a lot of that is when you're overshadowed by someone, the way that Scotty was overshadowed by MJ, or the way that, Texas A&M is overshadowed by Texas. There's and I'm a little brother, so I kind of get it a little bit. There's a natural tendency to want to sort of like branch out on your own, right? And so, and honestly, there becomes a point where the hatred actually helps fuel a split, right? Instead of keeping them together.
Sure.
And I think that's maybe the part that we missed with Texas and Texas A&M was like, oh, they would never want to leave each other. It's like, no, the fans want to play each other every year, but the universities hate each other so much.
Yeah.
They would love to be rid of the other one.
Sure.
Right. And so I think that's the part that we missed.
You look at it, Missouri, Kansas.
Yeah.
As much as Texas and Texas A&M is a rivalry, Missouri, Kansas was older.
Yeah.
The border war, that was older. That went away.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know about Oklahoma and Nebraska, which was one of the most, in terms of championships, one of the most important rivalries of all time.
Right?
Yeah. So once we started losing those, it wasn't as big a deal. I just thought because of the ties that the universities had to each other.
Yeah, the university systems.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then
that made it more complicated.
Yeah, it made it more complicated.
Sure.
And I understand why A&M left. I mean, it's a lot of money. And then also when it comes to recruiting, they could always say to SEC kids in that area, hey, don't worry. Yes, you're coming to play it in the state of Texas.
Yeah,
and A&M, you're still coming back to the SEC because we're now in the SEC.
That's the thing. Is the pitch that you can make to Texas kids, because about the biggest place that the really high-level Texas kids leave for is the SEC.
Sure.
They go to LSU, places like that. Obviously, everybody recruits Texas, right?
Yep.
But the really high-end guys, when they leave, it's usually for the SEC because they want to play at the highest level of football. Texas A&M has a huge advantage there.
Had a
huge advantage there.
Yep.
Not anymore because next year is going away, right?
Yep.
But had a huge advantage there to say, hey, yeah, you can still play in-state. You can still be close to mom and dad and whoever else, but you still get to play in the SEC. Right. So I totally understand it from the Texas A&M standpoint. It's the only thing that's close in terms of the university systems now is Florida and Florida State. Obviously, they're in different conferences already, but if the ACC thing ever goes away, Florida State probably ends up in the SEC.
Sure. But the problem with the SEC and the ACC teams, whether it be South Carolina or it be Georgia Tech or Florida State, is those SEC teams, Florida,
they get a right
South Carolina,
they
have it. Yes, they have they can vote, and they not only get their vote, but they actually get a bigger vote because of it.
Yeah. So I assume
it'd make it very difficult.
At some point, they're going to sweeten the pot enough to make them do that, especially for like a Clemson, because Clemson's a better program than South Carolina. It just is.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Florida State and Florida are probably pretty equal in terms of their standing, but they're going to make it lucrative enough for those teams to vote the way they want.
Oh, sure.
I mean, at some point,
nobody really cares about Georgia Tech,
right? Because Georgia's like,
except people there.
I don't even think Georgia care. Like Georgia would be like, yeah, you can come on over. We don't care.
Yeah,
because they're not a threat.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech's one that I actually could see in the Big Ten.
Although it would become a conference game all of a sudden.
It would.
If they went there. I don't. So that's one of the places I wanted to go to school when I was growing up.
Tech.
I wanted to be an engineer. I was going to go to Georgia Tech. Anyway, so I love it. I love Kenny Anderson. I love Bobby Crimmins. I have a love affair for Georgia Tech for many times. That school academically certainly fits.
Yeah.
I don't know if it fits culturally. I just don't know if it does. It's a very strange school. It feels private.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
It has a very private, exclusive feel, which is kind of a little bit like Northwestern, which actually is private. But I don't know if it fits culturally. And now they would love to be in the city of Atlanta.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Big Ten would like to be in the city of Atlanta.
SEC country,
that would be pretty cool.
Like deep in SEC
country. Right in the middle of it, of the SEC
like
championship.
Planting a flag in the in SEC
I'm sure they would
country.
like that. But the schools I always heard was North Carolina, and that's back when you had the old commissioner who went to North Carolina. And
Which
then
makes sense.
And then Florida State was one that got mentioned a lot. That's why the grant of rights got increased by the ACC.
See, Florida State doesn't make sense to the Big Ten to me.
That's the one that was always mentioned. I don't think so either.
So,
well, hell, Central Florida was a conversation, a deep conversation for a while.
So the ones that make sense to me are Virginia, Duke, North Carolina, and Georgia Tech.
Sure.
Even if culturally there's not a perfect fit with some of those, you've got the academics.
There's some things that happen in Virginia, man, that
the
Big Ten people will be like,
well, that's
you know what I mean?
For sure.
It's not great,
but it's got the academic prestige.
Sure, it does. Yes,
I think they're willing
and
to
good and decent, not horrible.
Good enough.
They're good in
athletics.
baseball. Obviously, they've been good in basketball, and they've been okay in football. Yeah.
Well, and that's the baseball is kind of the interesting one. I know it's not really a factor in these conversations, but baseball will be an interesting one if they do go into the ACC and get some of those teams, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, do we have to care about baseball in the Big Ten now?
You know, this was
from like the commissioner standpoint, not from fans.
Of all these teams we talked about, Kansas is one of the most lucky teams. Because Kansas was on the way out because they had no football program to really talk about when all that was happening. They got lucky.
Yeah.
They got really lucky that they held on the way they did.
Well, don't worry.
Because it could have been bad.
We would still keep a spot open for him for a basketball program in the Big East at least.
Yeah, it'd be great. Go
It
ahead
could be
and
like
play in the Big
UConn.
East.
Do the
And
UConn
be
thing.
independent football. Yeah.
All right, we've I believe got Damon Benning coming up next here on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute.
I want to thank our players.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
I want to thank our players, our staff, and all their families. They have responded in this time with exceptional work ethic, resolve, perseverance through an incredibly difficult time. In all my one-on-one meetings, time with our players during workouts, it has been absolutely inspiring.
Welcome back. Am I on, Shane?
Yeah, you're going.
I can't hear it.
I know it's weird occasionally.
It's like going on and in and out a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Welcome
very weird.
back to
I blame
Coffee
Shane.
and Cream. Oh, be nice to Shane.
Why? Did the show change that much? They're nice to Shane now? What happened?
I'm nice to Shane.
Oh, okay. You can do what you want to do.
Welcome back to Coffee
Nice
and
to
Cream
Shane.
on Hail Varsity Radio. We're live from the H&H Chevrolet studio.
He doesn't deserve niceness.
I'm Ravi, Lulla.
I'll take it, though.
That's Michael Severe, who apparently doesn't love Shane. That's okay.
No, it's different. I love him.
You're not gonna be nice
like
to
a
him.
third generation
come on,
redheaded
Shane.
stepbrother. I love him. He's part of the family, but we treat him poorly.
You do treat him poorly. I think
Yeah.
I'm the only one that's nice to him.
Yeah, probably. In the world, you mean?
Well, not in the whole
Are you still
world.
dating you still got a girlfriend? Is that still going on?
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
Well, it's always complicated when it involves men and women. One's from Venus, one's from Mars. But I mean, like in general, are you guys still a couple?
We're separated right now.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, buddy.
That happens.
It's all right.
I mean, the fact that he had a girlfriend always was kind of shocking. It was like, she lives in Canada. Sure, she does.
We've got somebody else that's been known Shane for a real long time on the line.
Who's that?
Our guy, Damon Benning.
Oh,
DP, what's
10
up?
rushes, 173 yards versus Pacific.
Oh, geez. Good morning, fellas. How are you?
What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good. It's just getting up and moving over here at Lucas Oil. I think guys start kind of trickling in around 8, maybe. 8 Eastern time, 7 your time. So we'll get started here shortly and see what's what. I thought yesterday was pretty interesting. I got some of those eerie feelings.
Ooh, okay. Like
Brett.
Like what?
So the last time I was at Lucas Oil listening to Brett Bielema, he was sandbagging us about Wisconsin versus Nebraska.
Okay.
And some of it is just his delivery. You know, he's very confident.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, he obviously loves his D-line with Randolph and Newton. I mean, those guys are pretty good, but there's just something about his delivery that makes me believe he knows exactly what he's doing. So I felt like he had a good day yesterday.
How big of a deal is it to you about them bringing Jim Leonard in as an analyst?
Well, I think it's pretty big. He'll eventually find his way, probably to an on-field position. He's
right.
Very smart. He pays really good attention to detail. You know, in the brief time that, you know, 2.5 months he spent recruiting in our household, I felt like he's pretty good. So I know he's bright, and those guys are they definitely have my attention. They did before yesterday. I don't want to make it seem like it's anything novel, right? You knew I kind of liked Illinois, and maybe I'm just hearing what I want to hear, but I felt like they had a pretty good day yesterday, like I said.
David Benning joining us from Indianapolis on Frappuccino and Carmelicious. Let me say this. let me just
I'm
say
Carmelicious, in case you were wondering.
Yeah, he's Carmelicious. I'm a Frappuccino.
I got you.
Let me say this. Let me say this about and I think Bielema is the most fun guy. I think if you're a reporter to cover, because he gives you everything, answers all your questions and stuff. But
yeah,
what he does with the offensive line, wherever he has been, even when Arkansas was struggling, they still could manage an offensive line. Is that a recruiting thing? Is that because he played? Why do you think he's so successful everywhere he's been developing offensive lines?
He knows what he wants the end picture to look like. That's a fantastic point, right? He's a very good teacher. He had really good tutelage, not only as a former player, you know, coaching it, but, you know, being around Alvarez so long, he's kind of traipsing around the grounds here. Just offensive line play is so interesting to him. You can just tell he gets excited talking about it. Some of his schemes are difficult too, I think, to kind of manage. They utilize kind of this gap scheme, and he knows what he wants his offensive linemen to look like, what he wants them to play like. And he's been able to, I don't know how they got by early on in the second half of the season in his first year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was like those guys weren't world beaters, but they found a way to kind of function. And I think a lot of it is just because he's a heck of a teacher.
DB, from what you saw yesterday outside of Illinois, what kind of stood out to you? Was there, I mean, I know we had Penn State, Ohio State. Obviously, we had the Four Corners offense with Northwestern's David Braun up there. Like, what stuck out to you besides Bielema?
I liked Coach Ferentz. And maybe he started this a couple of years ago, but he was extremely loose.
Not how we typically think about him.
No, he cracked a couple of jokes. He actually talked about specific players, which he doesn't often do. A lot of the talk yesterday, if it wasn't about Marvin Harrison Jr. probably wearing about $10,000 worth of attire, and that I don't think I'm exaggerating. We were trying to price it out. We were trying to price it out in our head, and it was a ton. But I think it was the fact that Northwestern had, Braun. That was the first time we heard from Northwestern in a press conference setting, and you could just tell he was uncomfortable. It's a very, very difficult position for him to be in. And I think quietly that kind of stole the show the first half of the day yesterday.
The bag was $2,170. The bag.
Yeah, the shoes had to be at least a couple of grand.
Were they Louis Vuitton too, or was it just the bag?
They were that. Yes, they were. They were Louis Vuitton limited edition.
Does he play for Colorado now? I thought the Louis was the Colorado.
He brought his bag with him.
Yeah.
You take whatever you get. Let me ask you this, because I know a lot of times when it comes to handling tough situations, there's a couple different techniques. Are you good with the Hogan's Heroes, we know nothing that Northwestern went with yesterday, or would you rather them being more open? Because there's one way. This is a way to do it where no one can really say anything if you don't say anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You like the old plausible deniability thing? It's going to play, right? I don't know if it's something that I necessarily like, but it will definitely play, right? As the talk behind the talk yesterday was kind of the releasing of all the information of what's really owed to Coach Fitzgerald. It seems to be more than the $42 million, right? I mean, you do those records requests when things like this happen, and it happens to touch federal money, so they'll have access to what those hard numbers look like. And I just think for everybody involved, they want it to go away as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
So I don't think they'll get into the details, right? They've been, even after they botched the whole lack of transparency and accountability in terms of just addressing the media, whether it's Shield or Dr. Gregg, who I saw sit with Dave Rebson yesterday. I didn't see it air. I could see him up above me when they were shooting it yesterday afternoon. But I think less will definitely be more with how Northwestern handles this, because I think now they finally are being the Northwestern that we thought, with kind of the media savvy isn't the word, but they know how to play they know how to play the game in terms of what we'll say, what we won't say going forward to kind of get this thing over as quick as possible.
DB, I'm curious what you thought about kind of the news of Minnesota yesterday, because Michael and I were talking about it earlier, and we're not sure that there's a fireable offense in there, but I think we also agree that it's pretty weird. I mean, how did you kind of process the information that came out about PJ Fleck in Minnesota?
Yeah, some of it was a lot of what
you kind of assumed.
Heard.
Yeah.
Right. We've heard about kind of the clapping and the ovations when he walks in the room, and the Fleck bank or whatever that is. That's probably the one thing that they maybe could investigate, but
yeah,
you're not getting
with the
nobody's going to corroborate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to corroborate the drug test and whether, you could skate by or not. So that's going to probably be much ado about nothing. But from what I gather, and talking to some people from Minnesota, folks had been up there for, 5-6 weeks, investigating. And so I felt like, they were going to do their due diligence. I just think we had this conversation with Northwestern when a lot of times when things are anonymous, it's just really hard to get behind because we've become kind of desensitized now to anonymous reports and sources say, and I just don't think we take it as serious without a name.
Yeah.
But I do get why people don't want to use names. It's just, I even saw some pushback yesterday from, whether it was guys, athletes or former players of different institutions. I mean, Will Compton had some strong takes about, I just think we're kind of hitting this phase where when folks want to be anonymous, it just doesn't carry as much oomph. And you add that to the fact that some of that stuff, I think we thought anyway, there wasn't a ton of quote unquote shock, I guess, in the piece. A lot in there, but I don't know if we're surprised.
Damon Benning joining us live from Indy. Ravi and Severe doing the show. A couple of Venti guys. Let me ask you about Coach Rule, because I believe his current PR record is 101-0. He had another win again yesterday with his picture, with the volleyball players and the food. Do you think this PR thing is because he's so experienced, having 2 head coaching jobs in college in the past, just his personality? Does he have someone around him that is watching everything, that's helping him with it? How is he so good at winning this stuff off the field?
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time with him last night eating. I'm telling you, he's just this is weird, but it's just him. Like he's got a couple of gifts. One is he's got really good discernment. Like he can size up a situation in a hurry. He's a real quick blinker. So even with things like his wit or, comebacks or kind of what he's stored in the Rolodex that you don't think he's paid attention to, he's very good at. He watches, he picks up on body language and mannerisms. Mm-hmm. So when he goes to address a situation, he's already collected a ton of data. So he has the ability to respond really, really quickly. And the other thing is he makes not taking himself so seriously work for him with a business approach. It doesn't make any sense, but he's so secure in who he is, and he's not trying to push it on anybody. He's supremely confident. So if you want what he's offering, he's here for you. If not, it's okay. He may not, he understands he's not for everybody. And I think he's willing to maybe not have him walk away, but he's willing to let you walk away. Mm. And there's just something to that where, it makes you want to stick around. I think that's how he's recruited. I think that's kind of how he's ran his department. It's like, hey, this is kind of how it's going to be. This has worked for me in the past. I'm open to suggestions. If not, let's roll. And if this isn't for you, then you can find something else different to do. But he cares. He finds a way to couch it, because I think he cares deeply about the people that are riding with him. So when you're on board, I mean, he's all in. I mean, you can pretty much ask him for anything to do anything, and he'll get it done for you. So, when they reached, you kind of told the backstory to his social media post with breakfast, and he's like, "Hey, man, sure, come eat, no big deal. Like, I get it. We got extra food. I didn't want to throw any away. It's just how he is. You know what I mean? It's like he has a ton of experience, and he's really good natured. He's an easy person to cheer for. because he, I don't know how it equates to wins and losses, but there's just not a lot of things like if you spend time around him where you're like, yeah, I don't really like that. You shouldn't have said, like, he just doesn't have those moments really where he's just easy going for a guy that is pretty rigid. His balance, it's fascinating to say the least.
DB, it kind of seems like it's one of those things where, like, if you're a good guy, the PR kind of takes care of itself. Like, is that, I mean,
that is 1,000% true. That when you're trying to do the right things and you want to do the right things,
it plays pretty well.
It's a natural byproduct, right? Like, he wants to be around student athletes. He wants to see student athletes flourish. So, social media and has, like, what he had everybody eat together if he could.
Sure.
I mean, so I agree with you. Like, when you want the best for people, that typically just reveals itself.
But you also have to, like, pay attention to what's happening on social media, because that was a social media driven thing, right? And the post wasn't up very long before it was deleted, and then everybody came along and started telling the correct story. He follows that. He's got so much other things to do. I mean, he's got a family. It seems like he follows everything. That's why I wonder, is there an assistant? Is there somebody there who's like a right-hand man or woman for him that keeps him up to date on what's going on?
So watching him last night, he does not rest. He's very active. Okay. Whether he's talking to some of just listening to the conversations about. Obviously Piper's there, Luke Reimer and Jeff Sims, and we're just telling stories, and they're talking about families and situationally growing up, and favorite a meal choice, and 5 minutes later he's gonna take 3 or 4 phone calls or send a text or scroll through something, and then he'll double check the schedule. The plane left yesterday for those guys to come at 3:30. I think they left Lincoln at 3:30, and he was still doing the Lincoln High School coaches clinic up until he left. So it's not like he was sitting around.
No time,
he was
no days
on
off.
His way to the air. It's because I think I just think he's afraid to become complacent. I really do. He's highly, highly competitive, and I think he coaches like that. He's like that around his assistants. Like, hey, this isn't Disneyland, guys. Like, we're not here yet. We have work to do, And I just he's just like that. He's just busy, being busy.
Damon, want to change gears here a little bit and talk about Jim Harbaugh, who's going to be up later today as well. Obviously, he's got some stuff going on. Also, I know that the company line is probably going to be like, oh, we can't comment on an ongoing whatever. But I also kind of feel like Jim Harbaugh is a little bit loose cannon-y. Am I crazy to think he might actually say something?
He might, because if you kind of get into like what's out there, it's basically his lack of corroborating with an investigation, right?
Yep.
Sending people on kind of wild goose chases, and stuff kind of all of a sudden disappears, and those people have been removed from the department, and he just, I think he's going to kind of do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And that's who he is, right? He plays by his own rules, and listen, that's fine because he's winning, and he's got one of the deepest, best defensive lines in the country, and they've got a couple of playoff appearances. Like, he's able to do these things because he's winning. When coming off the COVID year, he was still the same guy, but it didn't play well because people thought his act wore thin. When you're winning, it's kind of cool, and he's got bravado. So it'll be interesting to hear what he says here in a little bit, because I think he's going to say really whatever he wants to.
Damon Benning joining us live from Indianapolis. A couple of iced coffee guys filling in. My question for you is finish a sentence, right? So finish this sentence.
Yep.
Bud Crawford stops Errol Spence
in the 11th round.
Oh, okay.
You're going deep. You're going deep.
Okay, I put 25 on that plus 1100s. I would like that, but it's anywhere after the 9th, right? It's not going to be early.
Yeah.
Okay.
It won't. It's for sure. Listen to me like I'm in the ring, but
they're confident, Damon. Man, they're so confident. Goodness gracious.
I think 10 is extremely safe.
Yeah.
It's going 10 for sure, and I think Terrence gets a stop late. The odds have kind of come back down. You know, they ballooned. I saw as much as minus 170. I think he's having around 160 now.
Yep.
As a fave, which is weird for a guy that, you know, people poke holes at his record, and, you know, Spence has all the belts, but, and he's the ace. I just let him tell you, but stylistically, it's going to be an unbelievable fight just because, as you know, two guys with sensational boxing IQ. And I think you'll be surprised at Terrence's frame. He looks very good and broad across like his upper. He looks good. You know, his family's getting there. He didn't break camp this time for him. You know, sometimes he likes to come back and see them just to break it up. They got out there a little early. I think he's in a good spot, and it's no disrespect to Spence, but I think it boils down to. And I don't think Spence is willing to walk through the fire, and he's just going to have to. Bud he's waited for this day.
It seemed like he wanted it more than Spence did. Like he seemed like he wanted this fight more than Spence did.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he can talk about the details of the contract negotiating later on, but one guy didn't care about a rematch clause, and one guy did. So
yeah, right.
You know, one guy doesn't think he's going to need it. So, but the deal is set, and obviously it could be set up for a 3-part deal, which I don't think particularly made Terrence's side happy. But with such a huge payday on the front end of this one, maybe you had to stand and make PBC a little bit of money.
I haven't heard from or talked to a boxing guy yet that's picked Spence, like the boxing people in our lives. None of them. They all, even the gambling guys.
About 30 seconds, DB.
Stylistically, I just think it's not a bad matchup for Spence, but emotionally, I think it's a bad matchup because Terrence can take his mind places that I just think 99.9% of us can't.
Gotcha.
Damon
he
Benning.
Can endure, man, and he's willing to do it.
Damon Benning live from Indianapolis. I'm sure we'll talk to him plenty. Damon, text me back about the Crawford fight.
All right, you got it, buddy.
All right, thank you. This is Coffee and Cream. That's Damon Benning. We appreciate his time. We've got the Zipline Sports 6-pack coming up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Time now for the Sports Six-Pack on Coffee and Cream with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning. Presented by Zipline Brewing Company, makers of Dear Old Nebraska Brew, the official beer of Nebraska alumni.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream in the morning. Ravi, Lulla here with Michael Severe. And as the big voice guy said, it's time for the Zipline Brewing Sports Six-Pack, brought to you by Zipline and their Dear Old Nebraska Brew. Perfect for tailgating. It is Zipline's take on a classic American lager. Clean, crisp, and easy to drink. Might have myself a couple of those during the Bud Crawford fight this weekend.
I don't drink, but I love the zip. Hello, Shane. I love the zip line.
Yes, like the actual activity.
I love the activity of zip line.
Well, yes. So you're on board in some sense.
Give me a gorge, and I will go over it in the zip line in a heartbeat.
Michael Severe here for Gorges.
Love gorges, love zip lines.
Ravi Lulla here for Zip Line and the Sports Six-Pack. Shano, take it away, buddy.
Question number 1.
Favorite news story you have covered in your time as a newsman?
So this one's obviously pointed towards you a little bit here.
Right. Oh, man. So it would either be the Los Alamos fire, which was a 3-day trudge of not sleeping and just covering fire coverage.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was in Monroe, I covered an adoption ring corruption thing through the FBI, which they ended up getting this little kid back, this baby Callie story back, which was incredible because I was there when they gave the baby back to the mom.
Oh, that's incredible.
The adoption mom.
Yeah.
Took it from the other family who was trying to sell the baby for $100,000 on the black market. That story still sticks with me. I'll never forget those moments of standing in the parking lot of CC's Pizza as the FBI handed the baby back to the adoptive mother. It was incredible.
Shout out to CC's
Pizza, baby. It was $2.99 then.
Oh God.
Yeah. Oof. We ate so much food.
Obviously, I am not a newsman and haven't had the experiences that Michael's had all over the country. But, and this is very, recency bias here. One of the most fun things I've kind of covered is honestly the coaching search for Nebraska this past fall.
Oh yeah,
was a lot of fun. There were a lot of twists and turns. Like I got info that Matt Rule had a secret meeting or had like a secret trip
came into
to Lincoln.
Yeah,
and at the time everybody was like, "That didn't happen. You're full of it. Whatever." Especially when it seemed like the deal had fallen apart. And then it was so gratifying when Matt Rule kind of came in and like verified all the stuff where it was like, yeah, I did take a secret trip to Lincoln.
Yeah.
We did have a deal and it basically fell apart. And then we came back to the table and it's like all the things that I had heard happened actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it was super satisfying to kind of get, because you a lot of times don't get that. Even if the thing happens that you thought was going to happen, you usually don't get the like confirmed details of some of the rumors.
Yep.
So that was really satisfying.
That was perfect. Yep.
Yeah.
Question number 2.
Your most memorable movie theater experience.
So you're a big movie guy.
I am a big movie guy.
And I'm a big movie guy.
Yeah.
And so like, is there a time where the actual experience in the theater just like sticks out to you more than another?
Yeah, it will. My father was towards the end of his life was sick a lot, was in the hospital, and so I had these people that took care of me just outside of Easton, Pennsylvania, and their jobs were to clean a movie theater. I'm 6 years old. They would take me to the movie theater because I was staying with them while he was in the hospital, and they would clean the movie theater. I would sit in the theater and watch films.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Jaws as a 6-year-old. Still my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
It's my number one movie.
Yeah.
Watched it for the first time. Sitting there in a theater, it was me and maybe 3 other people.
Really?
And I'm a 6-year-old kid sitting there watching Jaws as they clean the other theaters. And it will never. I remember the preview. It was a movie about a Phantom of the Opera rock and roll weird movie.
It's like a core memory.
It was, and I remember it
Yeah.
like it was. Yeah, I always remember that moment. It was incredible.
And Jaws, that's an all timer.
It's my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it over 100 times in the theater.
Oh, so you're stepping on some other questions here. Relax. So mine is probably when I was a kid. Before the prequels, they re-released the like George Lucas remastered
I remember those.
Star Wars movies, and
In 97, yep.
Yep, we went and saw those.
and so I was obsessed with Star Wars. My brother was obsessed with Star Wars. So my mom took us to, I believe it was the Indian Hills Theater that used to be on like Dodge.
Center. Dodge.
Yeah, it was like 90th and Dodge.
Yes. Yeah.
Where they took us to that theater. We went and got to go see, and having, so I think statute of limitations is up here. I had before that just this bootlegged, like recorded off of the TV VHS of A New Hope.
Oh, okay.
Like that's how I watched it.
Oh my.
Was off of this like bootlegged recorded version
Yeah.
of the movie. So to see it in the big screen experience was like a monumental
That had to be amazing.
moment.
And people
for
love
me.
that theater, man.
Oh yeah. Shane, what's next?
Well, I just real quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
My movie experience, the best thing that I can remember was going to the Batman Begins opening day, Council Bluffs IMAX, and witnessing a fight because a lady got there 3 minutes beforehand and wanted certain seats.
So I had another one of my really memorable ones is going to see The Dark Knight at midnight, like at the midnight showing.
Yeah.
Because there was so much hype around like the Joker and Heath Ledger and everything. Like that was a really big one for me too. Like I remember who I went with, and like I remember I stayed up for like a couple hours after that movie because like my mind was just blown.
We went to go see Revenge of the Sith midnight because my wife was flying to Europe the next day, and we both fell asleep. And for 3 years, I had no idea that General Grievous was killed by Obi-Wan. I had no idea until I was talking to my son. He goes, "No," he goes, "Grievous was killed by." I go, "He was?" Because I slept through that part.
Incredible.
That's funny.
Oh.
Question number 3.
Which quarterback in the Big Ten do you like the most as a pro prospect?
Ooh.
Because I know you're a big quarterback evaluation guy.
Yeah.
And so I'm always interested to hear your thoughts on these. I mean,
this is not a great group.
The usual, well, right. Yeah.
It's not a great group.
Your usual suspects are going to be your J.J. McCarthy, your Tagovailoa, Cade McNamara, Jeff Sims, Tanner Mordecai.
I do love Tanner Mordecai because he made a ton of money for me when he was at SMU.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because I had all their preseason stuff over and all those. Wow.
You know, Ben Bryant put up some stats, but he's probably not in a good spot. Obviously, you've got some of the new guys like Drew Aller.
You know, if I'm going to go with one, because I think that he is this pocket passer that's kind of coming back now, it'd probably be McNamara. Because I know he can make throws.
Interesting.
McCarthy bothers me because I've seen McCarthy have games where he just looks bad.
He just
as
misses.
a quarterback.
Yeah, he just misses.
And I don't think he'll ever be accurate enough. But I know McNamara can stand in the pocket, take punishment, make throws. I think he'll succeed in the Iowa offense because it's a run-based offense, even though it's not being successful run the ball. And I think they'll protect him a lot better this year than they did last year. I could see him, but it's not a great – I mean, the Big Ten in general hasn't been a great group.
Like Aller or McCord really pop off.
Yeah, if somebody does that,
like one of the young guys.
Well, I mean, Ohio State's going to produce guys that are quality.
They're going to put up stats
drafted.
at least, right?
Yeah, always. Yeah,
but they may not be great pro prospects.
Yep. And the little baby Tua is too small.
Yeah, I mean it's 5'11".
Tagovailoa is a great guy to watch in college. That's what he is. He's a college quarterback.
How do you feel about like one of the transfers in like a Hudson Card or?
I didn't like Card coming out of high school.
Okay,
because he got talked about Nebraska. I don't think they recruited him, but he was mentioned a lot around Nebraska.
Very highly rated recruit.
Yeah, they talked a lot. I didn't like him coming out of high school. I didn't like his tape.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that was mostly a Michael question. You can move on, Shane.
Question number 4.
In a Big Ten West coaches draft, who are you taking?
Who are you taking first?
In the whole Big Ten, not just
Big Ten West.
Big Ten West. Okay, in the West. I could have them start a program.
Yeah, let's say they're starting a program from scratch.
I probably would take Bielema because, and we had this conversation. I had this
Yeah.
conversation with somebody not too long ago. Who would I take, Rule or Bielema? And I'm like, I know what Rule has done, but he did it in the Temple division of the Big East and Independent. They were bouncing around, and then he did it at Baylor in the Big 12. I haven't seen him do it at a big time conference. I've seen what he did at Wisconsin with Bielema, and I've seen what he's done so far at Illinois. And even at Arkansas, they had some bad luck with quarterback injuries, but he built good lines.
Yeah, they weren't terrible at Arkansas.
Yeah, I've seen him do it at 3 major conferences, so I think he can. I would take him.
Bielema's really interesting. I'm really, really high on Bielema in general, higher than a lot of people were prior to this year. I might take Rule just because of the rebuild thing because he almost started from scratch at Baylor.
He did. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So that
I believe they were 1-11 the year before he took over, and then went 1-11 again.
I believe so. Yeah. And then I really love Luke Fickell, but we haven't seen anything like this from him in terms of starting.
Yeah, his 1 year coaching was a horrible situation in Ohio State.
Well, and just from starting from scratch, we really don't have anything there.
Yeah.
Do we have time for one more real quick, Shane?
The last two, what movie have you watched more than any other, rewatched? And who is your favorite co-host of all time?
Jaws and Shawshank for me.
Yeah.
My favorite co-host of all time would probably be. That's a tough question.
I know. That's why. I knew you weren't going to answer
It'd be
that.
Kevin.
I knew you weren't going to.
Kevin, that was good times. It'd be Kevin.
Yeah, that's the OG stuff.
Yep.
That is your Zipline Sports 6-pack. Coming up next, we've got Brian Edwards go over a little bit of gambling.
Yeah.
Right here on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Now, Vegas insider, senior handicapper, and fan of the cold Budweiser bottles, Brian Edwards.
It's got to be touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
Brian Edwards.
I don't really love it.
Brian Edwards.
Were they using the cream cheese to butter the bagel?
Brian Edwards.
I'm going with the cowgirl.
Here is Brian Edwards.
Welcome back into Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio, AM 590 in Omaha. Michael Severe here with me. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now. We have Brian, Shane? There he is. We're joined now by our guy, Brian Edwards. You can find him at majorwager.com. You can find him at brianedwards.com. And, of course, he's the senior handicapper at Vegas Insider. B, how you doing today?
Doing well, gentlemen. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I've never seen Brian Edwards' face. I've never. This is incredible. I've never in all these years.
For years,
I've
right?
never seen his face. That's amazing.
I've seen yours a lot, but we've never been on camera. I've just seen you on camera, I guess, on Twitter and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I hope you're doing really well. One of the first things when I heard you were going to be on, I thought to myself, I know you're going to have something involving a team total. It shocked me, though. Oklahoma State kind of in a rebuilding mode a little bit. Why do you like them over?
Well, on these win totals, more than half the battle is the schedule, and and I agree, Michael. I mean, I'm not very high on this team in general, but they don't have to play Texas, they don't have to play TCU, they don't have to play Baylor, and they get to play all four new Big 12 teams: Houston, Cincy, Houston, and UCF.
Wow!
And looking at their road games, I think they're all winnable. I'm not saying they're going to win them all, but I mean, at Arizona State, total rebuild mode. At Iowa State, really down last year. At West Virginia, Neil Brown, biggest hot seat in the country, or one of them. At UCF, at Houston, you get Kansas at home. Now, South Alabama is a tricky non-con at home, but Central Arkansas is a layup. I mean, I think. Oh, and another thing, Gundy has won at least 7 regular. By the way, the number 6.5.
Right.
Minus 110. So he's won at least 7 regular season games every year since 2008, with only one exception. That was 2014 when they started 5-1, but ended up losing 5 in a row after that. 4 were the ranked teams. But Alan Bowman has not played the last 2 years at Michigan, but he had some good years at Texas Tech. Was the off and on starter for 3 seasons. So I think he's a guy who could kind of just plug and play in Gundy's system. And I just see them getting to at least 7 based on the schedule. And I think they're going to be a little better than most think on defense. And I just trust Gundy. And again, it's the schedule is the main reasoning.
No. Brian, I know you only sent us over the Oklahoma State one, but I'm kind of obsessed with team totals this time of year. Are there any other ones you're looking at that you're maybe thinking about? Maybe you haven't pulled the trigger on yet, but you're starting to like a little bit.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few of them, but I haven't talked about them with you guys. I've talked about them like a month ago with Damon and Andrew. So I'm on Arkansas over 6.5 as well. I'm on Ole Miss over 7.5 and LSU over 9.5. So Arkansas, I think Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson are one of the best, 1-2 combos at quarterback and running back. And look, they lost 4 games by 9 combined points last year. I mean, you look at the final record, they're 7-6, but they were very close to having a big season. And they added a lot of veteran depth defensively through the portal. Trajan Jeffcoat, 29 career starts at Missouri. Antonio Greer, 27 career starts at USF. John Morgan, 14 career sacks at Pitt. They got 2 DBs from Dave Aranda's Baylor team that are very experienced, Al Walcott and Lorondo Johnson. And I think Sanders and Jefferson are poised for big years. And let's remember now, KJ Jefferson missed 2 games injured last year, and they lost both of those. And one of them was the LSU game where they lost by 3. They definitely would have won that game if KJ was playing. And so anyway, for your listeners, I've got an article about Ole Miss and Arkansas's overs on Major Wagers homepage if you want to check them out.
Can I sell you on, I know it's off the board a little bit, but Duke over 6. They're one of the most veteran teams coming back. They actually went in the transfer portal, got some guys. I love their quarterback. What about Duke over 6?
I am not against it. I love their quarterback. They bring back everybody. They had a hell of a year last year, and most of those wins they had last year were by double-digit margins too, or were not. Well, several of them were, and their losses were one-possession games. I mean, by 8 at Kansas, by 3 at Georgia Tech in overtime, by 3 to North Carolina, by 2 to Pitt. I mean, all their losses could have gone their way, but the schedule gets so much tougher. They've got Notre Dame. They've got FSU. They've got NC State. I even think that in Pitt, and I don't think they did have Pitt last year. But the schedule's just so much. Oh, Clemson's the other team. The schedule's so much tougher. I haven't done it, but I'm not against them. And I think, it could be a deal where they're better than last year, but their wins come down a little bit. Again, I'm not against it, but it's a pass for me just because the schedule.
I think Lafayette, Northwestern, UConn, NC State, Virginia, Pitt, 6. Wake Forest being my 7 swing one. But yeah, it's one I love teams that bring. I love, they have the percentage now showing who's back on offense, who's back on defense. I look at those and they seem to correspond a lot to teams going on their over. So that's what I was looking at.
And they get Wake Forest at home on a short week.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you mentioned Virginia. That'll probably be an automatic. Well, it's on the road, but
at Virginia,
win that. Yeah, they would win that.
Brian, let's move over to, I know your favorite, UFC. We have a main card that I know you're a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger on the main card because of some of your personal feelings about liking those fighters, but there is a lot of action on some of those other cards. Where are you starting to look at places you like on this UFC 291 undercard?
Okay, I'm going to go with Kevin Holland, -140, which is at DraftKings. Most other books have him -150 against Michael Chiesa. Now, Chiesa is better on the ground, but I think it's a total mismatch standing, and I think Holland is going to be able to keep it standing. Now, he didn't have the takedown defense against Chimaev, but Chimaev's another animal.
Yeah.
And Holland got back on the board. He had a fight of the year candidate lost to Wonder Boy, and then he had to take the Chimaev fight. It was a switch up the last minute with the Nate Diaz, not the missing weights chaos that happened there. So, he had 2 tough L's, but I didn't downgrade him, and he got, back on track against Ponzinibbio. I think he takes care of business. I'm also going to go with Alex Piella. Most people call him Pereira, but the R is not pronounced in Portuguese.
Whoa, interesting.
John Anik gets it correct. Everybody else calls him Pereira. I like to correct it or pronounce it correctly. But anyway, so he lost to Adesanya for the belt. He's going up to make his debut at 205, but he was a tough weight cut going down, and he's got a 2-inch height advantage on Blachowicz, a 1-inch reach advantage. And Blachowicz was able to take Adesanya down and keep him down, but Pereira's a bigger guy, and I don't know if that. And Blachowicz doesn't really like to go to the ground. He just kind of had to go to the ground against Adesanya, so I think this will stay standing. And I like Pereira at either -105 or -110 in his light heavyweight debut.
Is that one where you think it goes the distance? It ends in a knockout? Do you have any prop for that one?
Well, I'm not going to play the total. Let's see. It's under 1.5 rounds. It's +108. Now, I could see either one of them knocking each other out early. But I'm just going to go with Pereira because, they both got good chins. It could go to the decision. I just want my investment to be in Pereira to win. So I'm not going to get involved in although I should have looked at the knockout prop. I can look it up here in a second.
Yeah, I play DraftKings, so I do that daily fantasy for UFC every week, and I love to play the props for knockouts, always over the distance with the ladies, of course, and find me a heavyweight to end under 2.5. So that's kind of my formula.
Sure, Pereira or Piella, excuse me.
Yeah.
He to win by KO is +170 at Bet Rivers and FanDuel. Only +165 at DraftKings.
Okay, cool.
I'm not against it. He could do that. I would have more on him -110 though.
Brian, you know me. I like that plus money. I like big payouts. Is there anybody you're looking at as a possible underdog that has some plus money on him that you think has a real chance to come out with the win?
Yeah, Derek the Black Beast Lewis +185 or +190. Now he's in the slump. He's lost 3 in a row, but he's been fighting top 5-6 guys. He lost to Tuivasa. He lost to Pavlovich, who I don't know where Pavlovich is in the rankings. I think he's number 2, or maybe he fell behind Aspinall after last weekend. And then he lost to Spivak. But he's going down in competition here to fight Rogerio, and Rogerio has won back-to-back fights, but he's not fighting ranked fighters. Lewis has been fighting top 5 guys, and Rogerio is 38, and Black Beast is 38. So, right now, Black Beast should be on your fade list against top 10 guys that are younger than him, but not guys that are not ranked. In other words, it's just a big step down in competition for Lewis. So I think he can get back on the board. Now, look, Ferguson, it's the same deal with Tony Ferguson. He's lost 5 in a row, but to all top 5 guys. Michael Chandler, Dariush Oliveira, Gaethje, Nate Diaz. I think Ferguson's got a chance at +310 against Bobby Green. I haven't played it. I'm going to watch it, see if the odds get even better. But maybe take a shot on Ferguson.
Brian Edwards, Vegas Insider, Senior Handicapper, MajorWager.com, BrianEdwardsSports.com. B, we appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, gentlemen. Thanks. Y'all have a good one.
Brian. You too, man.
Coming up next on Coffee and Cream, we've got Michael Bruntz.
Woohoo, Bruntsy!
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream. Ravi, Lulla, and Michael Severe. As you would notice, neither of those are Andrew Rogers or Damon Benning.
Nope.
Nope. We're filling in for them today. I'll be back with Jacob Padilla tomorrow. And then I think on Monday, your regular lineup will be back. That's what I'm told.
Nice. Took me years to say Padilla and not Padilla.
Yeah, I mean,
living in Nebraska,
it looks like
Mexico.
It looks like Padilla. He has insisted that it is Padilla, and
hey, Nebraska, you know, they probably say quesadilla.
Well, you know, it's I just go whatever people.
No,
tell
that's
me to
fine.
do.
It just took me a long time to not see it and say.
And what I'm telling people to do is to call our friends over at Dyer Law. Personal injury attorneys. If you've been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or just visit them at dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. If you're like me and don't really like talking to people on the phone, if you're, a millennial like me,
text them.
That internet, you get on there at dyer.law and you can chat with their trusted professionals at Dyer Law. One of our trusted professionals is our friend Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. How was that transition, Bruntz? Was that good?
That was very professional.
Thank you.
That was a very professional turn, yeah.
I'm almost 2 full weeks into filling in. I'm starting to get some of the reads down a little bit.
I wasn't sure how you're going to land the plane, but you brought it in for a soft landing, so well done.
Well, I appreciate that. It hasn't been the softest of landings for some of the coaches at Big Ten Media Days between Northwestern. Minnesota has a little bit of a kerfuffle that gets brought up last night. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh's about to be suspended or is suspended. I don't think it's official yet. What has been kind of the most interesting thing so far that you're seeing at Big Ten Media Days, whether it's just the stories that have broken or something that actually happened with the interviews?
I actually skipped yesterday. I think that was a veteran move on my part.
Oh, savvy. Yeah.
It was kind of a sleepy day, I actually thought. Like, there wasn't a ton that came out of it, but I mean the Flex story, while somewhat entertaining, I didn't really think there was a ton there.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to the other stuff that's going on in the conference right now.
Sure.
But, he's going to have to, I would guess, address it today. You've got Harbaugh here today. So maybe today you got a little bit more that might kind of come out of it. But, I don't know. I mean, it's I guess it's been kind of a sleepy Big Ten Media Days story-wise, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong.
Let me first say, I'm not used to listening to you in regular speed because I'm used to listening to podcasts with Bruntz, and you're talking way too slow. And then, which is really weird. It's freaking me out. Like, who is this guy? Bruntz, when you look at, I asked Damon this earlier because there's all these PR wins that Rule's been having, right? He always figures out a way to turn a situation to his side.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this cash that he's building now, if there's a struggle during the season, obviously they're not going to win other games, but do you think that helps him in the minds of the fans and gives him a little bit more runway because of all of this goodwill he's built over the last 6 months?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends, right? Like it depends on how it looks. Like if it's, you got some close games, you're playing what looks like good football, I think maybe that buys you a little time, but I don't know. I mean, I think at Nebraska, and we've seen this with, multiple coaches, that you kind of need to start fast, I think. You need to get a little bit of your own momentum. And I mean, he's done the off the field stuff, I think, about as well as anybody could have done to this point. And I mean, I think that's a good thing. I mean, if things don't go well right out of the gates, though, I mean, I feel like he's been through that before. I mean, it's not going to be something that he's going to panic about. But I don't know. I mean, I think there's probably some segment of the fan base that probably appreciates what he's done off the field at this point. But I mean, you guys know, and this is my sense too. I mean, there's just a lot of impatience for a turnaround. I mean, people have been waiting 20 years for this. So I think there's probably a limit to the grace that he'll get regardless of, what he's done and the good things he's done in the offseason so far.
Bruntz, I'm curious about Jeff Sims just in general, but I mean, this is, I keep thinking about it. This is this guy that they they handpicked to bring into Nebraska.
Yep.
And seemed really focused on him and kind of only him in terms of the transfer quarterback market. They got comfortable with him fast enough that they were willing to let a returning starter walk away from the program. How much of this with Jeff Sims do you think is are they kind of enamored with the physical characteristics that we've talked about, where they think he's legitimately like an NFL type passer in addition to his athleticism? And how much of it do you think it's a guy that's just on the same page of what Rule wants out of his program?
Well, I mean, go back to the first time that Matt Rule talked about him. I mean, the first thing he said was that he was an NFL quarterback. I've been a little bit surprised, I guess, by the amount of public praise that the coaching staff has kind of heaped on him to this point.
Because they're kind of backing themselves into a corner a little bit here, right? Like if it does it, like it has to go well now almost.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you look at that depth chart, I mean, it's got to, and he's got to stay healthy. But
that's big, healthy. Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that they love the traits, they love the athleticism. The arm is there. I mean, you look at what he did at Georgia Tech. I mean, he's an extremely flashy quarterback. My question is can you do the efficiency piece of it well? I mean, can you cut the turnovers? Can you get that completion percentage up a little bit from where it was at Georgia Tech? And I know it's a different situation. It's it wasn't maybe the best there during his time, but I think that the staff feels like he can do everything that they need him to do in the offense, and also kind of make the plays, on third down with their legs that are just absolute killers for an opponent. So, I think, Ravi, to answer your question, it's both. I mean, I think they really like what he can be long term, and I think also he kind of fits what they want to do anyways.
Bruntz, when you look overall at the way the Big Ten's moving towards obviously not having the divisions anymore and moving to what it'll be next year, you think it'll be a better conference? Because I'm trying to figure out exactly what USC and UCLA mean to the conference when they get here, because they're so far away. It's all that travel. It doesn't seem like it's going to be good for the student athletes. Do you think it's going to actually be a better conference when they get there, or do you think it's going to just be a messier conference?
It's an interesting question because, I mean, you go back to when Nebraska entered the conference. I mean, what they were picked to win the league. I'm curious to see, UCLA, I think there's definitely going to be an adjustment with the way that they kind of build things. I'm also curious with USC. I mean, are they going to be able to play the style of football that they play? I mean, Nebraska found out really quickly that you got to be pretty good up front in this league. I mean, I think more than most leagues, and I think that's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for both those teams. So I don't know right off the case if it's necessarily going to make the league better. I think it's probably going to muddy things a little bit, in all honesty. I'm curious with them getting rid of the divisions, what that means for the teams that are, right now in the Big Ten West. Because, I mean, you could always kind of count on, you've got 4 or 5 games that you felt like you're probably going to be in regardless. And you could kind of hang your hat on those. And I think it's a little bit tougher now, or will be a little bit tougher. So, I'm eager to see how they kind of bring everybody into the fold, because it's, just a very different way of doing things with USC and UCLA versus kind of how the Big Ten operates itself.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. Bruntz, it seems sort of inevitable now that, with the departure of USC and UCLA, with the departure of Colorado, that the Pac-12 seems to kind of be crumbling. But we've been here before with the Big 12, and we thought they were crumbling too. When you kind of look at that conference and who is kind of natural fits, obviously there were rumors about Oregon, Washington, Cal, and Stanford to the Big Ten at some point. Do you think that is more of an inevitability, or are you still kind of in wait and see mode on where those teams kind of end up?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a math question. I mean, how much value does an Oregon bring without diluting the pot for everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what it comes down to. And I don't know that, Cal does a ton for you. Maybe Washington and Oregon would be the two that I'd point to, but I wouldn't say that it's inevitable. I mean, I don't think that they need the Big Ten really needs to feel pressured to act. Unless they're trying to really pump things up on the West Coast, and I guess maybe help USC and UCLA out a little bit with travel and things like that. But I don't get the sense though that the Big Ten is just going to move, because there's not a lot of schools right now that are kind of on the market that make a ton of sense on the West Coast, aside from when you kind of have your wish list. I mean, obviously Notre Dame's towards the top of it for the Big Ten, but I don't know that they would necessarily go more West Coast. I mean, I was in Oregon this summer and drove through Corvallis. I mean, you look at facilities, you look at everything else. I mean, it's not even in the same stratosphere of where the Big Ten is. So Cal's kind of the same way. So I think that to me kind of says, like, okay, I don't think the Big Ten is just going to go out there and get schools just to get schools because everybody else is.
do you think it would make more sense for the Big Ten to kind of wait out the ACC situation and have access to some schools that maybe make more sense, whether it's Duke, North Carolina? We talked about Georgia Tech. I know some people have brought up Miami. They're really strong academically. Does that make more sense in terms of fit and value to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would think like in North Carolina, that would make a ton of sense to me. I could see a couple more ACC schools being kind of no-brainers if they can figure that out. I mean, I think if you're going to bring in a couple more, I think it makes more sense for the Big Ten to maybe look east than west at this point. But I think there's a number of ACC schools that if you had to, if you're like, okay, we got to go get two, and it's not going to be Notre Dame. I mean, I think there's a couple there that definitely makes sense.
Bruntz, what level of the defense do you think is going to look the best because it's in a 3-3-5, based off of the guys who are going to be from last year, some of the additions? Which level of the three levels do you think they'll look the best because they're playing in a 3-3-5?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I have questions about both the defensive line and the linebackers. I mean, the defensive line, I don't know what that picture completely looks like. I mean, it's going to be young.
Yeah.
And then, linebackers, they're moving guys around, it seems like, to every spot. I mean, I could see a guy like Luke Reimer looking pretty darn good in this defense, just based on what he's going to be asked to do. But I mean, in my mind, it's probably the secondary. I mean, you've got enough veteran guys back there that I think that they can play easily in this system.
That second safety position is hard, though. I mean, you have to have somebody that can do a lot to be really good in that spot. Third safety position, not second, third safety position, I meant to say.
That would be my only question, is who that will be. Because I don't have a good answer for that right now. But I think, though, that the guys that you have in that group and the veterans that you're starting with, I think that gives you a bit of a leg up compared to the other spots. Because I think MJ Sherman's going to be good.
Yes.
I don't know how that picture looks with him and with Reimer and Henrich and how that's going to shake out. So I would kind of default to the secondary probably right now. Although, you look at that front, and I think there's a lot to like with some of those young guys.
Bruntz, I'm curious because we're in like wild speculation season right now. So feel free to throw some darts here. Is there a guy that you're thinking about, or as you're kind of looking at the way the depth chart might shake out, that is kind of below the radar, but you think might have a really good year?
Thinking.
Processing.
Yeah.
There's a couple guys that come to mind, and I'll toss mine out there.
Okay.
I think Gifford could do really well, kind of in that like rover spot.
Yep.
Because he's kind of a tweener, and that was a knock on him before, but it kind of fits what they're trying to do now. And then I still haven't given up on Xavier Betts. Like the talent just is so immense that if he can figure the other part of it out, that to me, especially with the opportunities at wideout this year that I think are going to be there, he jumps out to me too. So that's kind of the direction I'm going with the question is guys like that who maybe, obviously Jeff Sims is going to have to be good for them to be good. And the defensive line is going to have to be good, but maybe some guys that you're just like, I've got a feeling about this guy.
Yeah. My mind kind of went to like Malcolm Hartzog initially.
Okay.
In that secondary. I don't know where he's going to ultimately end up, but I mean, I think we saw enough last year from him that things were probably trending pretty well there. A guy that we'll probably have to figure out today what his timetable is, but like a Marquise Buford, also in that secondary, would be a guy that I think is going to do pretty well once he's healthy. You mentioned the wide receiver spot. I mean, you could probably go down the line in that group for guys that are kind of under the radar. I mean, right now as we stand here, I mean, how many guys would you say Nebraska feels good about at wide receiver? I mean, like two. I mean, it's a pretty.
I was gonna say like a half.
Yeah. it's not much. So, I mean, that group, like overall, I think by default kind of is the, who's going to emerge there. So, but Betts is a good one. I think, he could be that third guy to pair with Kemp in Washington, because I don't really know who it would be right now when they get going on the 31st.
Yeah, I think that's the position I think is going to surprise the most people, wide receiver, because I think Marcus Washington's got a chance to be a breakout now that he has I don't think he's the number one. I think Billy Kemp's going to catch the most passes, but I think Marcus Washington no longer has that person in front of him like he's had both at Texas and then last year with Trey Palmer. So he's going to be able to see. I think Xavier Betts is going to have a big year. But my big thing is, if you're going to have two tight ends, if Eric Gilbert gets his waiver or whatever, and a healthy Fedoni, I think the middle of the field is owned by those tight ends. They love throwing the ball. If you look at the history of this, the backfield guys out of the backfield. So I think it's going to spread out so much. It's going to be productive, right? But I don't think there'll be anybody that you can look at and go, okay, that's the star.
Huge breakout
that's
star,
the star receiver, because there's so many guys going to catch balls. You know what I mean?
I think Kemp has a chance to be. He's going to be a volume guy in his offense. But he's the one guy that I'm like, okay, if you get to the end of the year, I could see him having, significantly more catches than the rest of the group.
Sure.
Just in part of, because I think a lot of the underneath stuff's going to be his purview and things like that. But your point about the tight ends is certainly well taken. I think that's going to be a huge piece for them.
Bruntz, is there a position group that you feel like you know the most about at this point? Before, I mean, we haven't even started fall camp yet, right? But that you feel some version of certainty, whether for the good or the bad, that you look at and you're like, I know what this is.
Let me think. I as much as I was saying earlier that linebacker is a bit of a mystery. I mean, I think you kind of know the cast of characters there well enough, and then you can kind of project what Sherman's going to bring to that group, and feel pretty good about where they're going to go. I mean, you're going to need some young guys to step up and fill in depth, but I think you feel okay about that group and who you're going to rely upon. Beyond that, running back's another one that you kind of don't know how it's going to shake out, but you feel okay about the guys,
about the group,
in the group. I would go there too. I mean, I think that group too, it's going to be a lot of committee. I mean, it's going to be a lot of like Michael said, guys catching balls out of the backfield, things like that they're going to really be relied upon. So I would probably say running back is the one that you probably know the most about. It's just a matter of kind of how things are going to shake out use-wise with that group.
This is something that I find fascinating when you talk to fans opposed to people in the media. You ask them the most important of the first two games, all the media people say Minnesota, but all the fans still have this Colorado thing where they're like, it's Colorado. It's Minnesota, right? Because, I mean, we're still in divisions. But I guess if you lost to Colorado could still hold, 3 or 4 in a row over you. What's the most important of the first two?
I will go with the canned media answer and say Minnesota. I think you got to come out in that game and play well. And first games are tough, especially with the new staff and everything else that's so new. But it's a divisional game. I think you win that game, and you go to Colorado feeling pretty good about things. So I would go Minnesota. Taking the emotion out of it.
Right.
I think that's definitely the more important of the two.
Bruntz, I asked Michael this question earlier, so I'm curious your thoughts on it. If you're starting a program from scratch and you have to choose one of the Big Ten West coaches to start that thing, where are you going?
How many flex bucks do I get?
How many drug tests do you need to pass?
I'd go Matt Rule. I mean, I that's a bit of a homer answer, but I think if you're building something from scratch, you want the program builder, right? And I think if you're building a program in Nebraska, I mean, I think he's finally hit on a pretty good recipe recruiting wise for how you have to do things there. I just think that the way that they have done things so far, there's a lot of intention, and I think that they're going about it the right way. So I'd go Matt Rule. I mean, I think he's got the juice. He's done it at a couple other places, so I'm sticking with the Rule. Rule's the answer.
Yeah, I went with Bielema only because of the conferences that I think he's done it, and I also thought that the Arkansas thing would have worked eventually if they would have gotten out of his way. But I get what you're saying about Rule, but the funny part about it is he's doing it now in a completely different type NCAA than it was when he was here last time. So he's got to learn this new way of doing it. It'll be interesting to see if it works the same for him as it did at Temple and Baylor, when it's almost easier to get players than it was then, especially those locations.
Yeah. Well, and they're also betting a lot on, I don't think they're going to go as heavy into the portal next year. I mean, I think they're really going all in on the development piece of it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're going to need to get to, year 3 or year 4, and you're going to need a lot of guys that are going to be walking out there on senior day that have been in the program for a while for this thing to work. I mean, that's how it has to be. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, how they adjust to that. I mean, how they, adjust with what has been a relatively young coaching staff too. That's going to be interesting to see.
Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntz, we appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Ash.
Thanks, Bruntzy.
That's our good friend Michael Bruntz, who I've known for 20 plus years.
Really?
Yeah, he went to high school with my brother.
I would like to just be friends enough with him where I could hang out with he and his wife and have her talk Mandarin to me.
Yeah, Courtney is incredibly smart.
I want to hang out with. I just want to sit in back. I don't want to be too close because my ignorance would show off.
Sure.
But I want to be close
in the room.
In the room.
Yeah, her, my brother, and Bruntz were all best friends in high school.
And she speaks Mandarin?
Yeah, she does.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She's a genius.
I want to hang out.
Yeah, I want to hang out with
Omaha Whiskey Fest coming up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio. Ravi, Lulla here with Michael Severe, and we are joined now by the good folks at Omaha Whiskey Fest. I've got Phil and Rachel here with me. We're going to talk to Phil first. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming by. I know last time you were here, it was Andrew and Damon. Mm-hmm. They're off on summer vacation. I was a little jealous actually because I was listening and I was like,
10 days.
I wouldn't mind being here for some of the whiskey tasting. So I'm glad to be here with you today. So with Omaha Whiskey Fest, first of all, let's just get the details out of the way. When is it? Where is it? What is it?
So Omaha Whiskey Fest, it's October 7th. Pretty proud to be a part of this. I'm one of the founding members.
Mm-hmm.
I have a great board. Rachel, she's in charge of our volunteers. It's down at the Hilton. We basically take over the whole hotel.
Okay.
We have pipes and drums. We have food. There's entertainment suites. There's for volunteers, volunteer booth,
Mm-hmm.
VIP. Live music. The Hilton does a wonderful job. They've been very amazing to work with.
And you can find all this stuff at omahawhiskeyfest.com as well.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Hey, when you're talking whiskey, you could be talking something that is really affordable to the point where
absolutely.
You hear Shane? Shane, am I working?
Yeah,
you're on.
Okay. Back again.
So so you go from something that's really affordable to something that's $400 a glass. What is kind of the range of whiskeys you'll be able to find?
So for the VIP, which I understand we're going to be giving away a few sets of those today, you get an hour early, and there's some of that higher end stuff. But realistically, we have over probably around 300 some kinds of whiskey, 60 some booths, a little bit of everything from bourbon to Irish, Scotch, from all around the world.
So for somebody who's just getting into it to somebody who is a whiskey connoisseur,
this is definitely the place to be. If you want to learn a little bit of something, we're going to have distillers, brand representatives, ambassadors. We'll have people that work in booths that can tell stories about whiskey. I mean, there's a little bit of everything there for you.
And you mentioned those VIP tickets. So they're actually sold out, but you can still get them a couple ways, right?
Yep.
If you book a stay at the Hilton downtown.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
then the 3 pairs we're giving away today.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want the VIP tickets, that's how you do it. The general admission tickets, you still have plenty left, right?
Yeah, we do have a fair amount of those.
Okay.
The one thing, with supporting the local businesses, everything. But that Hilton, like I said, there's going to be plenty of stuff going on around before and after, so you could really make it a whole evening. You could book the hotel there. There's going to be live music at the hotel, the venue itself, and then you have the Capitol District, everything that's around there. So you could really make it, whether it's a guy's trip or you want to take mom and pops out or
a little staycation.
Why not, and just do it in Omaha. There's lots of good food, everything around. So
walk us through getting this started. How you came up with the idea, put it together.
So it was with Zach Tramert, who owns Brickway.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Chaz Klein, myself, I've been to several whiskey fests, up in Chicago, Kansas City, everywhere. But it's we just thought Omaha deserved something like that, and it was we worked very hard getting this. It was really a grassroots effort. That's why we tried to do a little something different. Like our glassware. With bringing the pipes and drums in, and it was just basically started in the basement of Brickway. There was plenty of whiskey involved.
Raise the glass so people can see the glass.
Yeah, here. So this is last year's glass, but Oh, and inside I do have some Glenmorangie there.
Yeah, he was kind enough to Phil was kind enough to pour me a little bit of the Glenmorangie.
Finger and a half there.
What is this? The 12 year. Is that what this
little
is?
dram. Yeah, this is So I brought Glenmorangie because today is National Scotch Day.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So they do that every year. I don't know exactly when it started, but
what's the difference between whiskey and Scotch?
Well, all Scotch is whiskey. Not all whiskey is Scotch.
Right? What does Kentucky have to do with it?
Kentucky, that's pretty much like the bourbon.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is America's native spirit. So.
Oh, awesome.
So I know we just hit on a few of them right there: Scotch, bourbon, whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like this whole range, right, of different, not necessarily types, but like flavors of whiskey for just all different like palates.
There's about everything. I mean, this one I brought here, this is a single malt, but it's aged in bourbon and sherry cask.
Okay.
Now, sherry, which is kind of funny because nobody really drinks sherry anymore, but they continue to make it because of all the whiskey that's put in there. Zach has a good sherry cask whiskey himself.
Sure.
Nice.
But it really just adds a nice little smoothness to it. It's good. I mean, you could have everything that's light and delicate, like a lot of Irish whiskeys. You can go to big and heavy and strong cask strength whiskeys, bourbons that are out there. So it's whiskey's a lot of fun. I mean, it really tells a story, and there's nothing like raising a glass to friends with it, and especially on a hot, amazing day like today.
One of my favorite things about when I followed wine was the stories.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where the grapes, the vineyards, all that stuff. But is there a food mix like there is for wine that go with
like a pairing?
There absolutely is. I mean, I like to mix some dark chocolates, different things. I remember with because I've sold booze for better part of 20 years, but I came up with this idea to do a Girl Scout cookie pairing with whiskey.
Nice.
I did everything from old granddad to
Nice.
but we paired up cookies, and I tell you what, it was a hit. It was so much fun. I had like the pictures of the cookies itself and then the tasting notes. It was a lot of fun.
That's a great idea.
Before we bring Rachel up here to talk about the volunteers with us, is there anything else either about National Scotch Day or about Whiskey Fest that you want to let the people know about?
Well, I would say if you're going to celebrate National Scotch Day, you can go to a distillery like Brickway, which has one of the largest copper pot stills that's out there. You can go to Havana Garage, have a cigar with a buddy and try that. You can go to Spirit World and grab some whiskeys and do your own pairing, grab some Girl Scout cookies, and have some fun with it. But the important thing is to celebrate with friends, family, and enjoy it. So
Phil, we appreciate it. We're going to switch out to Rachel here. Just a reminder, October 7th is Omaha Whiskey Fest at the Hilton Omaha downtown. You can buy tickets at omahawhiskeyfest.com. VIP tickets are sold out, but you can still get the VIP experience by booking with Hilton Omaha. Rooms are filling up fast, but you can still get those today. And we are going to give away a few pairs of those VIP tickets as well. Rachel joining us now. You're in charge of the volunteers. Is that what I'm understood here?
Yes, volunteer coordinator. I got the opportunity to do it last year, and they asked me back to help it this year. So it hopefully means I did a good job, and I'm excited to bring some people in to help us out.
So what is the volunteers' role here?
What do they get for free?
No. They get in.
That's a good
They don't have to pay for a ticket.
Okay, right?
That's awesome.
So what different types of volunteers you're looking for? What is needed here?
all across the board. The biggest one that we need the most of is because we've got 60 plus booths and we've got whiskeys to actually sample and pour. You're going to have some very experienced people there as well, but they're going to want some breaks and people to come in and help. So with that, we want at least one volunteer per booth, and then we need some people to help break. With that, though, for the whiskey pouring, you do have to be Safe Serve certified, which is super easy. If you sign up online for it, I send you an email, shows you how to do it, free course, that type of thing. And that certification also lasts for 3 years. So you don't have to do it every single year. I've got some people from last year that I know already are ready to jump right in.
And you can just go to the website. You have a volunteer page where you can sign up.
Correct. We've got a volunteer page. And on top of whiskey pours, I need help setting up. I need help breaking down. Nobody wants to stay at the end to break down. But if you get in for free, why not help out?
That's true.
Check-in people. We need people to help check in. When you walk into the Hilton, we take over the building. So you're going to walk in, you're going to see our check-in people. You're going to see volunteers guiding you on which rooms to go to, hall monitors all across the board. So really, those people that you pass by in the hallway that are helping carry trays, empty trash, those type of things, those are the people that actually help that thing run. I need those people.
So it sounds like a pretty serious undertaking. What kind of numbers are we talking about here in terms of number of volunteers you've had in the past? How many are you looking for this year?
I'm looking for almost double from what I had last year.
Okay.
So last year we were around 100, and I need about probably 200 to 225 to make it run even better than it did last year.
And is that part of just the event growing as well, just needing more bodies?
Yep, absolutely. And just figuring out what works and what doesn't work. We want to make it seamless for everybody that attends. So why not come in and help or volunteer, get in for free, and be able to enjoy it as well. Even if you're a poor or check-in person, we're going to give you breaks where you get to go enjoy the event too.
One of the things you can sign up for is bag stuffer.
Yes.
What are in the bags?
You know what? It changes every year. Last year we had hats, jiggers, like the ones that you pour out of, bottle openers, all different types of things in there. But the volunteers get the same bags also that the people that attend do. So really you get in and you get all the same aspects.
It's a swag bag.
Swag bag, absolutely.
Everybody
you get behind the scenes, you get all the fun stuff.
Everybody loves a swag bag. Got a little less than a minute here left with you. I guess, how did you get involved with Omaha Whiskey Fest? And I guess, what makes you so passionate about it?
You know what? I actually got asked by Phil. He used to be a liquor rep that I worked with when I was in the liquor industry. So I love helping coordinate and also just networking. I'm a realtor and I love to meet more and more people every day. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to get in and be a part of something that's such a big opportunity here in Omaha.
So people can get involved either through the website. Is that the best way to volunteer? Is OmahaWhiskeyFest.com?
Because then it goes right into our format, and I'll reach out to you. You'll be on my email list.
There you go. That is Rachel and Phil from Omaha Whiskey Fest. That's October 7th at the Hilton Omaha downtown. We will give those tickets away in the next segment. We're also going to talk to Kevin Iole about the Spence and Crawford fight. Coming up next on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Crawford, a little bit more versatile, where he can make a living on the outside with his jab, with his long reach. He's got a very long reach. He can set up traps. He can do a magnificent job counterpunching as you try to get to him past that long reach. And he can also go get you. And he's a nasty son of a gun. He can go and get you. He's not adverse to getting a little dirt on him in the ditches.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream in the morning. Two pieces of business before we get to Kevin here. Number one, if you want to win those Omaha Whiskey Fest tickets, there's 3 general admission pairs. There are 3 VIP pairs. Here's what you have to do. Earlier in the show, we mentioned what Damon Benning's high rushing yards in his career were. It was against Pacific. You call Shane at 888. Hold on, I got to find the number. 888-638
4876.
4876. Sorry, it's on a different part of my page.
That's 888-638-4876.
What did Damon Benning rush for in 95 against Pacific?
In 95 against Pacifics, the first 6 people, the first 3 will get the VIP, the next 3 will get the general admission.
Perfect.
The first 6 people to call Shane right now, 888-638-4876, will get those Whiskey Fest tickets. This and booking a hotel at the Hilton Omaha are the only way you can still get VIP tickets because the rest are sold out.
Right.
The other thing that I wanted to say before we get to Kevin is wanted to remind you that our friends at the Omaha Storm Chasers are out of town right now, but they will be back starting August 8th for a 6-game homestand with Iowa. They'll have Faith and Family Night on that August 12th, Corn Chasers Night on Friday the 11th, and, of course, the $2 deal days on the 10th. Make sure you get your tickets and get on out to Werner Park. Something that I wish I had tickets to was the Bud Crawford and Errol Spence fight coming up on Saturday. And to talk about that, we have brought in our friend Kevin Iole, as Michael informed me, Hall of Fame boxing writer.
Yes.
Kevin, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good, Ravi. Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right in here with you. Obviously, Bud Crawford is hugely popular here in Omaha. The odds on the fight have shifted pretty dramatically into his favor after being a coin flip early on. When you're kind of evaluating these fighters, what can you say about their styles and kind of how you think this fight's going to go that would have led to Crawford being a pretty significant favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that if I'm not mistaken, the number's moving in the way of Spence, but Crawford is still a pretty significant favorite. Yeah. Crawford was about 2-1 when it opened, as I remember, and it's now 8-5 Crawford. And I just think, that shows, Crawford has been pound for pound number one on a lot of people's lists. I think he just has shown a more complete game than Errol Spence. But the thing that's so great about this particular fight is that you have two unbeaten guys who are at the top of the food chain in both, not only the welterweight division, but also in the sport of boxing. They're both in the top 5 pound for pound by everybody. They both have a claim to being the best welterweight in the world. And I think we're going to see on Saturday night a fight that is an epic battle between two truly great fighters. I think the winner goes into the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Probably both of them are going to go in anyway.
Definitely.
But I think the winner punches his ticket on Saturday night. And I think we're going to see a fight that people are going to be talking about long after this one.
Yeah, I was thinking since Bud had already unified one division that he probably was already a Hall of Famer. If he can do a second one, which I don't believe in modern boxing that's happened with the way things are now with 3 different belts and stuff, or even 4 at times, what would it mean for his legacy if he could, again, unify another weight class?
Well, I think this is different than before. Like if you look at his, he unified at 140, and he probably did make it, right? But he beats Julius Ndongo, the guy that wasn't well known, well respected by a lot of people in the public, even in the media. People didn't know Julius Ndongo. Everybody knows Errol Spence. When Errol Spence came out, I remember I covered him in the Olympics. I got back to the U.S. and I started calling people and saying, what kind of pro is Errol Spence going to be? And literally, I had like 10 people in a row say to me, Sugar Ray Leonard.
Oh,
left-handed
wow.
person, Sugar Ray Leonard. And it was like, I was shocked, right? And I knew he was going to be good, but was he going to be that? And he's proven as a pro to be in that realm, that kind of potential. And, Crawford, the interesting thing, like what I love about this fight too, is, Spence comes out of the Olympics. He has the hype. He has all this going on. Now he comes back as a pro, and he's at the top of the game. Crawford was different than that. Crawford didn't make it to the Olympics, and he fought in lower weight classes, and he wasn't getting a lot of attention. He bounced around from a couple promoters, and people didn't give him a lot of credit. And now here he is. I've had him number 1 pound for pound in the world for a while now, although this week I kind of changed things for a lot of people with what happened on Tuesday night. But now, Crawford is perceived by everybody as, if not the best fighter in the world, number 2 or number 3. And, he's going into this fight with a lot of momentum, and a lot of people, I think, are picking him to win this.
We're talking with Kevin Iole. He is a boxing and MMA writer for Yahoo Sports. You can also find him at keviniole.com. With Crawford and Spence here, it's become really rare for two guys that are, I would say, still in their prime. I mean, Crawford certainly hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. He seems to get almost stronger every fight. How rare is it just in this day and age of boxing, the way everything's so convoluted, to actually get not only two guys that are undefeated, that are fairly high profile in the sport, but also actually still in their primes?
I have a story today, actually, that's going to be posted probably within the next hour that's talking about that. And I'm talking about, this is the biggest fight in boxing since when? But the good thing that's been happening in boxing over the last couple of years is this has been starting to happen finally. I've been on your show before, and we've talked about, the fights don't get made, blah, blah, blah. But now, maybe in the last 2 or 3 years, we're seeing a trend. We saw Garcia and Davis fight each other earlier this year. There have been, 8 unification fights over the last little while. I mean, it's starting to change, and I love that they're doing this. And I also love the way this fight got made. The promoters, first it was Top Rank and PBC, then Crawford went on and he fought for Black Prime, and they couldn't get it done for him. And then you know what happened? Crawford and Spence get on FaceTime. They call each other and they have 3 conversations, and they figure it out and they get it done. And I love that about this fight, right? And I think the fact that they are doing this now, this is a huge moment in boxing. And I think this fight on Saturday can be big for a number of reasons, because there's momentum in boxing now because we've had so many good fights, and we've got a huge pay-per-view number out of Garcia and Davis, even though that fight significantly in the ring wasn't the same as this fight's going to be. We're talking here, the 2 best guys in the world. that wasn't the case then. So now I think people who maybe have been away from boxing will tune into this fight on Saturday night and say, boy, now I see what I'm missing, become boxing fans. That would be a great part of their legacy too, if they can say, hey, not only did we put on a great fight and show the best that boxing has to offer, but we brought new people into the sport as a result of our talents.
If you look at the way the prop odds are set up, it's favored towards that Errol Spence would win by knockout, that Crawford would win by decision. But what do you think happens, and do you think we get into deep water on Saturday night?
I like Crawford by decision. The day the fight was announced, I like Crawford, and I've never changed by that. But the great thing about this fight is both guys can win, and both guys can win either way. Could I see a scenario where Crawford stops Spence? 100%. Could I see a scenario where Spence outboxes Crawford and wins a decision? 100%. But so that's the intrigue of the fight. And I think it's going to come down to mistakes and who's able to implement game plans. And the one thing, like if I had to say, what is Terrence Crawford's strength as a fighter? I think he is the successor to Floyd Mayweather, is like a genius in the ring. Terrence Crawford is the smartest fighter in boxing, in my opinion. And he has a good trainer, but it's almost like he doesn't need that good trainer, because other fighters, when they have a good trainer, they go back into the corner after a round and the trainer tells them how to adjust. Crawford is so good. He's like a trainer himself. He makes adjustments as he's on the fly. And I think that is what, when I look at it, I say that's the little bit of a difference between these two guys that leads me to say Bud's going to win the fight.
You mentioned kind of the genius of Mayweather and how we see that in Crawford. I think, at least me, and obviously I'm biased, but I think the thing that separates Crawford from a lot of fighters for me, whether it's Mayweather and the genius or some of the other guys that have the technical acumen that Crawford does as well, is it seems like Crawford has all those things, and he also likes to hurt people when he's in there. Am I crazy, or is that something you've seen as well?
No, that is definitely, I've been saying a lot, Crawford is a mean guy in the ring, and he is a finisher. And when he gets you hurt, man, you're in trouble. He doesn't usually let a guy get off the hook. And I think that's something. Now, but given said that, when you look, Errol Spence is a big, strong guy. He's never really been in trouble in his career. Can Crawford hurt a guy like that? If he hurts him, I think he'll finish him. But can he hurt him? That's going to be the thing that's the question of the fight. But I just think that the matchup is so fun, and it's going to be one of those things. We're going to be on the edge of our seats, throughout. There's always that pent up tension when the first bell rings, and but then you kind of settle into it sometimes. But I think they're going to have us on the edge of our seats the whole way, given the way they match up and given what they like to do.
It was funny Tuesday morning, so many people up on Twitter watching a fight early in the morning hours. It was kind of strange, but what about the way Inoue won that fight that makes you move him to number one in your pound for pound?
Well, I had him number 2 going into this week, and I've had these two 1-2 for a while now. Crawford 1, Inoue 2. Inoue goes out there, he moves up in weight. He was the undisputed bantamweight champion. Could have kept fighting at bantamweight, but he decides to chase the undisputed title at super bantamweight. And he goes out there, and he's this unbelievable combination of speed and power. I mean, he punches so hard. And Stephen Fulton was undefeated and had 2 belts, and I think Stephen Fulton was on the way to the Hall of Fame going into this fight. And Inoue went out there and he made it look easy. He won every round. He was so fast. His boxing skill was amazing. His combinations were so precise, and then he showed that big time power when he had an opening, and he created the opening. It wasn't like Fulton made a mistake. He created the opening and he finished him. And so I did a story earlier in the week on Tuesday after the fight ended, after I wrote my column. I said, I'm going to update my pound for pound right now, because I just thought after that moment, you're going, he destroyed one of the top 10 fighters in the world. And I thought he deserved recognition, even if it's only for a couple of days, as number 1. Now, it's going to be on Crawford now to put on a show against Spence that makes you say, yeah, you know what, I was right before, and move him back. And that very well could happen. But I just thought that the bar that Noya set in that fight was extraordinarily high, and he deserved that even for a few days.
Kevin Iole, Yahoo Sports, and KevinIole.com. Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the fight this weekend.
Thanks, Kevin.
Will do. Thanks, guys. See
Appreciate it.
Thank you to Michael Severe for joining me here today. Problem. Shane Schilberg here as always. I'll be back tomorrow with Jacob Padilla for more
Go to work.
Coffee and Cream.